Chapter 335. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. After 3 days of recuperation, all the participants were in peak condition. Meanwhile, the outside world was already abuzz with discussions about who would obtain first place. There were even people who had specially set up bets for this matter. Countless people participated in the bets, and the total amount of money wagered had reached tens of millions of purple gold coins. However, almost all of the bets were on Ming Dong's victory. Only 1/10 of the bets were placed on the other 7. At noon, the plaza in the center of Mercenary City was already packed with people. The number of people who had come to watch the battle today was much more than 3 days ago. The line stretched to the edge of the plaza, and the traffic in the center of Mercenary City was severely congested. In the ring, Jianqin and Karaja stood straight as they glared at each other. "Brat, your relationship with that Ming Dong seems to be pretty good." "Ming Dong killed my brother, Gaddafi. Today, I'll use your blood to pay tribute to Gaddafi's soul. As for Jianqin, he'll be accompanying you very soon." Karaja coldly sneered as he stared at Jianqin. Jianqin gently snorted. He stared at Karaja with a mocking expression. "Your brother Gaddafi said something similar to Ming Dong, but he was cut in half by a single stroke of Ming Dong's sword. Now you're learning from Gaddafi and threatening me. It looks like the person who will fall today is destined to be you." Do you think you're Ming Dong?" "Ming Dong's strength as a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master has indeed exceeded my expectations. What I did not expect was that he actually knew a high-level Heaven tier battle skill. Gaddafi's death to him was not unjustified. As for you, are you a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master as well?" If you really are a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, I'll immediately admit defeat and kowtow to you 3 times, Karaja coldly sneered. His voice was filled with disdain. Jianqin said expressionlessly, "You don't need to know how strong I am. You just need to know that you won't have the chance to kneel down and kowtow to me, because you won't walk out of here alive. You will pay the price for every word you said before." Towards the end, Jianqin's tone became more and more fierce, and the powerful killing intent was not concealed. The murderous intent in Karaja's eyes soared. He sneered and didn't say anything else. "Begin." The referee's voice came from outside the barrier. A 2-handed great sword immediately appeared in Karajar's hand. The great sword was silvery white, 2 meters long, wide and thick. The entire sword emitted a faint white light, full of holiness. At the same time, the light wind sword also appeared in Jianqin's right hand. Jianqin pointed the sword at Karaja and coldly said, "If you have that strange armor on you, I'd advise you to take it out now. Otherwise, you won't have the chance later." Karaja was once again enraged by Jianqin's frivolous attitude. In the past, no matter where he went, he would always be looked at with respect and admiration. Today was the first time he had been looked down upon by a brat who wasn't even 20 years old. How could the high and mighty Karaja endure this? He immediately angrily said, "Looks like you don't know how the word death is written. Against you, there's no need to use the Radiant Saint armor. Die." As soon as he finished speaking, Karaja raised his great sword and charged at Jianqin. The saint force on his great sword was even stronger than the 5th cycle Earth Saint Master Gaddafi's. Karaja's strength was actually the same as Ming Dong's at the 6th cycle Earth Saint Master realm. Jianqin coldly stared at Karaja. In the next moment, a purple and green sword chi suddenly appeared on the light wind sword, adding a bit of color to the pure white sword light. Qin Ji and Tianmu Ling, who had been paying attention to Jianqin the entire time, both had their eyes fixed on the sword in Jianqin's hand. To be more accurate, their eyes were focused on the purple and green light on the light wind sword. They couldn't help but think back to the day when Jianqin had easily pierced through Shijingran and Jitawukong's barrier. They could still vaguely remember that at that time, Jianqin's light wind sword had suddenly appeared with a purple and green light. Right now, the purple and green sword chi was very thin, but because of the pure white sword light of the light wind sword, the appearance of the purple and green sword chi was very eye-catching. Although Karaja had noticed the purple and green sword chi on Genshin's light wind sword, he didn't pay it any mind since he didn't know what it was. He continued to charge at Genshin and used sweeping away to attack Genshin's waist. At the same time, Genshin also moved. The light wind sword met the great sword and the two saint weapons fiercely collided. Boom! A violent energy burst out from the point of contact between the two holy weapons. Karaja's holy force was much stronger than Genshin's, so the light wind sword's sword chi was immediately scattered. The sword chi scattered in all directions, but when it came into contact with the ground, it didn't leave a single mark. As for the sword chi that came into contact with the enchantment, it disappeared into nothingness. Although most of the sword chi on the light wind sword had been dissipated, the purple and green sword chi was not affected at all. When the purple and green sword chi collided with Karajar's radiant holy sword, the indestructible radiant holy sword was like a piece of rotten wood. A hole as wide as a thumb and as deep as 2 fingers could be seen. With his saint weapon damaged, Karaja was also affected. With a groan, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly became pale. Almost at the same time that the light wind sword and Karaja's radiant sacred sword collided, Genshin's second strike followed. The speed of the first strike was so fast that it only took a blink of an eye. Whether it was the speed of the strike or the frequency of the strike, it was inconceivable. Karaja had just realized that his saint weapon had been damaged. Before he could even show a shocked expression, a faint purple and green light flashed in front of his eyes. In the next moment, Karaja's eyes became sluggish. The figure in his eyes quickly disappeared, becoming more and more empty. At some point, Genshin's figure was already standing behind Karaja. He was still maintaining his graceful posture as he stood there motionless. Below the stage, countless people were pointing at the 2 people fighting on the stage. They were discussing spiritedly, and the entire plaza was filled with buzzing sounds. Who do you think will win this battle? Is there even a need to ask? Of course it will be Karaja. It will definitely be Karaja. I heard that Karaja and Gaddafi have a very good relationship. Even Gaddafi has the strength of a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master. Karaja's strength can't be much better. Who knows, he might even have a heaven-tier battle skill. Genshin's strength is also not bad, but he's just too young. Look at his age, he's only in his 20s. How many years has he cultivated for? Yeah, Genshin looks like he's only cultivated for a dozen or so years. And from what I can see, his saint force doesn't have any attribute. How can he fight Karaja? Karaja's saint force is of the extremely rare light attribute. He's known as the Undying Man unless you use an extremely powerful attack. You won't be able to kill him. However, this kind of discussion quickly stopped because many sharp-eyed people saw a red dot appear on Karaja's neck. The red dot continued to expand and soon covered his entire neck. It seemed as if a red necklace had appeared on Karaja's neck. But when the red dot became darker and darker, everyone suddenly realized that it was actually blood. Blood continuously flowed out from Karaja's neck like a thin stream of water. Karaja's head also tilted slightly, falling from his neck and rolling around the arena like a gourd. After losing his head, the blood on his neck suddenly formed a fountain, spurting out a meter-high pillar of blood. The bright red blood dyed a large area of the arena red. Below the arena, the entire square was completely silent. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the bloody scene in the arena. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Karaja, who possessed light attribute saint force and was extremely powerful, had his head chopped off by an opponent who was definitely not older than 25 years old at the beginning of the battle. Such a huge difference made everyone feel disbelief. It was very difficult for them to accept this fact. Genshin didn't care about the feelings of the people below the arena. After the referee announced his victory, he directly left the arena through a space gate. The spectators below the arena still stared blankly at the arena. They didn't return to their senses for a long time. What a fast sword! He actually stabbed out twice in an instant. It's just too fast. Looks like the two-colored light on his sword is a bit strange. It can actually destroy the Saint weapon of a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. After a long while, an old man who was a Heaven Saint Master sighed. After leaving the arena, Jianqin was unable to hide his excitement. This was not the excitement of winning, but the pleasant surprise of discovering that the Azure Sword Chi had actually strengthened a little. It was just that it was very difficult to see from the outside. Chapter 336. The second match was between Ming Dong and Zhang Sun Yunfeng. After a short break, the ring had been cleaned up. Just when Ming Dong was about to enter the ring through the space gate, Jianqin grabbed him and glanced sharply at Zhang Sun Yunfeng. He whispered a few words into Ming Dong's ear. Afterwards, Jianqin clenched his fists tightly as killing intent flashed through his eyes. He said coldly, "Don't worry, Jianqin. Brother Qin, Shao, treated us well in the past. I will definitely avenge him." With that, Ming Dong entered the ring with killing intent. Zhang Sun Yunfeng was a middle-aged man. He had a refined appearance and seemed like a well-educated scholar. His eyes flickered as he looked at Jianqin and Ming Dong. His heart began to thump uncontrollably. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth in the end and strode towards the space gate with his head held high. Very soon, the two of them entered the ring at the same time. Jianqin's gaze towards Zhang Sun Yunfeng was rather cold. The killing intent in his eyes leaked out without any concealment, causing Zhang Sun Yunfeng's expression to become rather unnatural. He became stern. He had a small conflict with Jianqin in the past, and it just so happened that the two of them were on extremely good terms. With all of that added together, Zhang Sun Yunfeng could obviously guess that Jianqin was using Ming Dong to get rid of him. "Begin!" The referee's voice rang out. Ming Dong did not hesitate at all when he heard that. He left behind an afterimage on the spot as he charged towards Zhang Sun Yunfeng with great speed. "I concede," Zhang Sun Yunfeng called out almost as soon as the referee announced the start of the match. After personally witnessing the battle between Ming Dong and Gaddafi, Zhang Sun Yunfeng gained a clear understanding of Ming Dong's strength. He did not believe that he was Ming Dong's opponent. However, Ming Dong did not plan on sparing Zhang Sun Yunfeng at all. He arrived before Zhang Sun Yunfeng in the blink of an eye, and his huge sword shot through the air with saint force so great that even Zhang Sun Yunfeng would sigh in admiration. At the same time, an indescribable pressure radiated from the huge sword, viciously pressing down on Zhang Sun Yunfeng's body. Zhang Sun Yunfeng immediately felt like he was in a quagmire, making it extremely difficult for him to move. An Earth Tier battle skill. Zhang Sun Yunfeng's face drastically changed. He had never thought that an ordinary attack from Ming Dong would possess the might of an Earth Tier battle skill. He had actually used an Earth Tier battle skill, so casually. Ming Dong's huge sword tore through the air with unparalleled might, slashing towards Zhang Sun Yunfeng like a thunderbolt. It was so fast that Zhang Sun Yunfeng, whose movements were restricted, had no time to dodge at all. At this moment, a barrier fell from the sky. It was like a barrier between Jian Ming Dong and Zhang Sun Yunfeng, completely separating the two of them. Ming Dong's attack landed heavily on the barrier that had suddenly descended. The surging energy from the huge sword was completely absorbed by the barrier, like a whale sucking in water, while the barrier did not even tremble in the end. When one side concedes, the other side is forbidden from attacking again. Ming Dong is victorious. The referee's voice rang out in their ears. Afterward, two space gates appeared before them. Ming Dong viciously glared at Zhang Sun Yunfeng before letting out a helpless sigh in the end. He walked through the space gate with some disappointment. Zhang Sun Yunfeng also let out a huge sigh of relief. At the last moment, the referee had acted in time to stop Ming Dong. Otherwise, Although he might not have died from Ming Dong's attack, he definitely wouldn't have been able to walk out of the arena unscathed. Zhang's son, Yun Feng, stared at Ming Dong's back with some lingering fear. He then left the stage through the space gate beside him with a rather gloomy expression. He had cultivated arduously for over 40 years to reach his current level, but he had never thought that he would be forced into such a miserable state by a junior who was not even 30 years old. Next up was Qin Ji against Czar. Although Qin Ji had a king armament, his spirit power was suppressed in the arena, so he couldn't use his spirit power at all. On the other hand, Czar had the Holy Light armor, which had a very strong defense. After a short exchange, Qin Ji was quickly defeated by Czar, and in the end Czar won. The final match was between Oliai Duoya and Bai Litong. Both of them were burly middle-aged men with similar strength. They were both 5th cycle Earth Saint Masters. The two of them fought fiercely on the stage for an hour. In the end, Bai Litong took out a king weapon and defeated Oladoya, obtaining the final victory. Currently, the top 4 had already been decided. They were Jianqin, Ming Dong, Czar, and Bai Litong. After a day of rest, the competition continued the next day. After a round of drawing lots, the final list was announced by Mercenary City. However, what made Jianqin and Ming Dong extremely depressed was that they would be opponents in the next battle. Czar's opponent was Bai Litong, who had only revealed his ruler armament at the very last moment. In the arena, Jianqin and Ming Dong both looked at each other helplessly. Fate was making fools of them. They never thought that the heavens would play such a huge joke on them at the very last moment. Today's battle would determine the final 2. If Ming Dong and Jianqin had not met, it was extremely likely that the 2 of them would take 1st and 2nd place. Now that the heavens had arranged it, one of them was destined to be eliminated. Begin! The referee's voice rang out, but the 2 of them had no intentions of fighting. Ming Dong, you're very strong. I believe you can take 1st place. I hope you don't disappoint me, Jianqin said calmly. He had already planned on surrendering. He knew extremely well that if he did not use the sword spirit's powers, he would not be Ming Dong's opponent at all. His swift sword style posed no threat to Ming Dong. This was because Jianqin was a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master with wind-attributed Saint Force. Moreover, his comprehension of the illusory flash was much deeper than Jianqin's. Jianqin had no chance of winning against Ming Dong in terms of speed. I admit defeat. Just when Jianqin was about to admit defeat, Ming Dong beat him to it. Ming Dong chuckled when he saw Jianqin's stunned expression. Jianqin, you're no weaker than me. I believe you have the ability to take 1st place, so don't disappoint me. Jianqin bitterly smiled. Ming Dong, it's not difficult for you to take 1st place with your strength. Why did you give it to me? Because you need it more than me. Jianqin, I've heard from Uncle Tian that anyone who takes 1st place can enter the sacred grounds of Mercenary City to cultivate for half a year. Jianqin, you know that I'm a peak 6th cycle Earth Saint Master right now. As long as I want to, I can break through to Heaven's Saint Master at any time, so the sacred grounds are useless to me. However, it's different for you. Jianqin sternly stared at him. Jianqin smiled freely. All right then. Jianqin, since you've given it to me, I definitely won't disappoint you. Congratulations on your success, Ming Dong smiled. Ming Dong was completely unaware that his admission of defeat had attracted a lot of curses. This was because many people believed that Ming Dong would get 1st place, so they had all bet on Ming Dong's victory. Now that he had admitted defeat, everyone who had bet on him had lost a lot of money. The final outcome of the battle between Jianqin and Jianqin had indeed exceeded everyone's expectations. Only a few people who knew the 2 of them seemed to have expected it. They had all spent some time with the 2 of them, so they knew that Jianqin was indeed very powerful. However, they all followed Jianqin's lead when it came to making decisions, as if Jianqin was Ming Dong's boss. The millions of people in Mercenary City who had no idea what had happened all discussed the matter loudly. They were extremely displeased that Ming Dong had given the opportunity to Jianqin after admitting defeat. Only when a Heaven Saint Master said that Jianqin was definitely no weaker than Ming Dong and could behead Karaja in the blink of an eye did the discussions gradually calm down. As for the people who had lost money, they all hung their heads in dejection. They were filled with regret. However, no matter how loud the discussions were, Ming Dong and Jianqin were unable to hear a single word from within the barrier. The barrier was soundproof, so the sounds outside could not reach them at all. The next match was Czar against Bai Litong. Czar was already a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, and his battle skills were quite powerful. On the other hand, Bai Litong was only a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master. Even though he wielded a ruler armament, he was not much of a threat to Czar, who was protected by the Radiant Saint armor. At the same time, Bai Litong also possessed Radiant Saint force that could rapidly heal. As a result, the battle between the two of them did not last very long. It ended very quickly, and Czar emerged victorious in the end. The final match was held the next day, and it was also the battle that received the most attention. This was because the final battle would determine the strongest person in this year's mercenary tournament. At the same time, the winner would be crowned as the Rookie King of the mercenary tournament. Jianqin did not relax at all during the rest of the time. He used all of it to study the illusory flash. His Heaven's Fortune art had already reached the 1st layer, increasing his battle prowess by 3 times. Jianqin was already extremely satisfied with this. Even if he spent the rest of his time on the Heaven's Fortune art, it would be impossible for him to reach the 2nd layer. Taking a step back, even if he could raise the Heaven's Fortune art to the 2nd layer, it would only increase his battle prowess by 1-fold. On the other hand, the consumption of Saint Force would be 4 times higher than normal, with his current strength as a 1st cycle Earth Saint Master. Even if his strength increased by 4 times, he would still be unable to contend against a Heaven Saint Master. Chapter 337. The next day, the competition that countless people had been anticipating was finally about to begin. This was because today would be the day that the strongest person in the mercenary tournament would be born. The mercenary tournament that was held once every 50 years would finally come to an end today. At the same time, information regarding Jianqin and Czar had become the focus of countless people's discussions. There were even a few Heaven Saint Masters who used their exceptional eyesight to analyze Jianqin and Czar's strength. In the end, their analysis was actually pretty close to the mark. Czar was between 45 and 50 years old. He was a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master and possessed Saint Force of the Light attribute. He was known as the Undying Person. No matter how severe his injuries were, he could quickly heal himself using Saint Force of the Light attribute. He possessed a unique advantage and had an extremely complicated relationship with the 2 people he had killed before who also possessed Saint Force of the Light attribute. He seemed like a friend, yet also an enemy. The battle skill he currently possessed was unknown, but he possessed a mysterious armor with extremely powerful defense. However, according to the speculations of some people, Czar possessed at least 1 heaven-tier battle skill. Jianqin was between 20 and 25 years old. He was an Earth Saint Master from the 1st cycle to the 2nd cycle. The attribute of his Saint Force was unknown, but his attacks were extremely sharp. The speed at which he struck with his sword was unbelievably fast, to the point where even a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master would find it difficult to dodge. Moreover, he was able to fight for a long period of time. His arm did not seem to feel sore or numb at all. He had grasped the highest level of movement technique, so his speed was extremely fast. Currently, the battle skill he possessed was unknown, but he had a mysterious trump card that could destroy the saint weapons of 6th cycle Earth Saint Masters. When he used it, the saint weapon would emit a purple and green light. His overall battle prowess was still very powerful. According to the speculations of some people, Jianqin definitely possessed a heaven-tier battle skill. When the strength of the 2 was announced by some people, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. At the same time, the bets for the 2 were reopened. This time, perhaps because it was the final battle, everyone's interest in gambling was unprecedentedly high. Some rich and powerful people bet hundreds of thousands or even millions of purple gold on the two of them. In the end, it led to the total amount of bets being more than 100 million purple gold. Because the strength of the two of them was not easy to evaluate, some people favored Jianqin, while others favored Tsar. In the end, the ratio of bets was directly tied. Half of the people bet on Jianqin's victory, while the other half bet on Tsar's saint power. Ha ha ha, it's so lively. I'll also bet 100,000 purple coins that Brother Jianqin will obtain the final victory. Tianmu Ling extended her hand and threw over a spatial belt filled with 100,000 purple coins. I'll also bet on Brother Jianqin's victory. 500,000 purple coins. Qin Ji also joined in and threw over a spatial belt filled with 500,000 purple coins. I'll bet on Jianqin's victory. 1,000 purple coins. That's all I have. Doctor and took out a large amount of purple coins and threw them onto the gambling table. 30,000 purple coins. I'll bet on Jianqin's victory. I'll bet everything I have on Jianqin. Qin Shao also squeezed in from behind and joined in on the bet. 100,000 purple coins. I'll bet on Jianqin's victory. Dugu Feng also did not want to fall behind. He also squeezed in from outside with an expressionless face. In the arena, Jianqin and Tsar were already standing there. Jianqin was still as calm and carefree as before. His body was straight as a ramrod as he stood there with a sword in his right hand. The tip of the sword was slanted to the ground as he stared at Tsar across from him with a sharp gaze. Tsar was a burly man. He was at least 2 meters tall. His sharp gaze was also staring at Jianqin across from him. At this moment, he was already fully armed. He wore a set of silver-white armor that shone brightly. One could see streaks of light energy flowing on the surface of the armor with the naked eye. It caused the entire Kai clan to emit a faint layer of white light, giving off a holy aura. The Kai clan covered Tsar's entire body. From head to toe, only his eyes were exposed. Wearing the Kai clan, Tsar looked even taller. Paired with the holy radiant sword in his hand, he looked like a mighty and inviolable god of war. The two of them had already stood in the arena for the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, but the referee still had not announced the start of the battle. Suddenly, the silver-white armored Tsar spoke. Jianqin, although you've used a special method to hide your presence, I can still sense that your saint force is far inferior to mine. However, with your current age, I believe that you'll definitely be able to stand at the apex of the Tianyuan continent in the future. Whether we win or lose this battle, I hope that we can become friends and not enemies. Tsar's voice was extremely calm. Hearing Tsar's words, a sliver of surprise flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He stared at Tsar in surprise and asked in confusion, "We've killed your companions, Gaddafi and Karaja. Aren't you going to avenge them?" Hidden within the helmet, Tsar's expression was completely hidden. His voice remained calm as he said, "I admit that Gaddafi, Karaja, and I come from the same place. However, the three of us belong to different organizations. Not only are we not friends, but we're also competitors. Our relationship is extremely delicate. If the situation isn't good, we might even become enemies. I should thank you for killing the two of them, because you and Ming Dong have perhaps eliminated 2 future enemies for me." Tsar let out a long sigh. "The three of us have been in a stalemate for far too long. Perhaps it's time for it to be broken." With that, Tsar asked again, "Jianqin, whether we win or lose after this battle, I hope that we can become friends." Hearing this, Jianqin's eyes flickered. He knew that there were many things involved in this matter. If things went wrong, he might even be dragged into the storm for no reason. After thinking for a while, Jianqin said calmly, "I can only say that we might not become enemies. As for becoming friends, this isn't something that can be achieved with just 2 words." Tsar nodded slightly. That's right. If two strangers can become friends with just 2 words, then this friendship is too worthless. Jianchen, I know that you're determined to win first place. I wonder if you're confident in beating me. Jianchen's eyes flickered. He didn't know what Czar wanted to do, but he still said, 5 levels. Czar chuckled. Looks like you're quite confident in your own strength. Saying this, Czar put away the huge sword in his hand. He then took out a 2-handed silver sword that was also 2 meters long from his space ring. He smiled. Jianchen, if I were to use the saint weapon, how confident are you in beating me? Jianchen's gaze subconsciously fell on the huge sword in Czar's hand. Immediately after, a golden light flashed in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, If I'm not wrong, this sword of yours should be a ruler weapon, right? Czar didn't deny it. He chuckled and said, That's right, it is indeed a ruler weapon. Jianchen, if I were to use a ruler weapon, how confident are you in beating me? Jianchen fell silent. He didn't answer. No one knew what he was thinking. Czar continued, Jianchen, I'm sure you know that it wasn't easy for the 2 of us to get to where we are today. The harsh conditions for participating in the mercenary festival have eliminated most of the geniuses who were born too early. Therefore, whether it's you or me, neither of us can easily give up on first place. We'll both do our best to fight for first place because it's too close to the 2 of us. As long as we defeat our opponents, we'll be able to successfully obtain first place. Therefore, I'll definitely fight for first place with all my strength. Czar paused. He then stared at Jianchen and said, If you agree to one of my conditions, I, Czar, can give up on this competition and give you first place. Hearing this, Jianchen's expression didn't change, but his mind became unprecedentedly active. His mind quickly connected with what Czar had said before and quickly came to a conclusion. This was very likely to involve a battle between several large forces. Czar's condition was indeed very tempting, but what was certain was that under such tempting conditions, there would definitely be a great price to pay. Czar might have taken a fancy to Jianchen's potential and his relationship with Mingdong, or he might want to tie the forces behind him and Mingdong to him. But no matter which possibility it was, Jianchen definitely wouldn't agree. Sorry, I think that we should compete based on our own strength in this battle. Jianchen's expression was quite calm, and his tone was still indifferent. Jianchen, don't you want to hear what my condition is? Czar asked. No need, Jianchen indifferently said. Jianchen, this is your only chance to obtain first place. I'm not afraid to tell you that I have grasped an intermediate heaven tier battle skill, and I have a king armament. Do you think you can still defeat me? Czar said. A meaningful smile appeared on Jianchen's face as he said, Czar, if you can't hit me, then what difference does it make even if you have a king armament? As for a heaven tier battle skill, haha, heaven tier battle skills are indeed very powerful, but they need time to charge up. If you dare to use a heaven tier battle skill, I'm sure that my sword will be pointed at your neck before you can even use it. If Czar's head wasn't covered by his helmet, his expression would definitely have been very interesting. He was in a daze as he looked at the calm Jianchen, who was still talking and laughing in front of him. It was the first time he felt that he was so useless, that he was actually completely taken advantage of by a junior. After a short silence, Czar let out a long sigh and looked at Jianchen with a complicated gaze as he muttered, If my son was as outstanding as you, how great would that be? Even if I had to give up 100 years of my life, I would still be willing. Jianchen. Chapter 338. When Mingdong saw Czar take out his ruler armament, his expression became very unsightly. He said in a deep voice, This is bad. I didn't think that he would actually have a ruler armament. He really hid it well. Now it's troublesome. I don't know if Jianchen can defeat him. Afterwards, the 2 of them didn't speak any more nonsense. They stood on the stage and quietly waited for the referee to announce the start of the match. They waited for more than 2 hours. If it weren't for the fact that Czar didn't move, Jianchen would have suspected that the referee had already announced the start of the match. He had waited for far too long. He had been standing there since early morning, and now it was almost noon. The fiery red sun hung high in the sky, emitting a dazzling light. The golden sunlight spread over the ground, as if the ground was covered in a layer of golden carpet. Although the sun was strong, no one felt the heat. It was now winter, and the winter sun was especially warm. When it fell on people's bodies, it only gave them a warm and comfortable feeling. It wasn't like the summer heat that made people feel disgusted. It's 3/4 to noon. The match has officially begun. A voice that he hadn't heard for a long time finally passed through the barrier and entered Jianchen's ears. Hearing this, Jianchen was so depressed that he almost spat out blood. He didn't think that he and Czar had stood there like idiots for an entire morning just to wait for 3/4 to noon. Kill! On the other side, Czar had already begun to move. He radiated with milky white, light-attributed saint force as he raised his ruler armament high in the air. He was holy and powerful, as if he really was an almighty god of war. His might was inviolable. As Czar suddenly swung his ruler armament, a huge beam of energy shot out from the ruler armament, forming a 2-meter-long crescent-shaped sword chi that shot toward Jianchen. Its might was shocking, and wherever the crescent-shaped sword chi passed, the surrounding space seemed to slightly distort. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master wielding a ruler armament was far more powerful than Dugafeng and the others. The crescent-shaped sword chi was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it arrived before Jianchen and sliced Jianchen's body into pieces. In the end, it slammed into the barrier behind him, causing ripples to appear on the barrier. Seeing that Jianchen's body had been cut into pieces by the crescent-shaped sword chi, the crowd below the stage let out a cry of surprise. But as soon as the cry of surprise started, it came to an abrupt stop. It turned out that Jianchen's body had only been cut into pieces by an afterimage, while Zhensheng had already arrived behind Khazar. His light wind sword was covered in a faint purple light as it pierced towards Khazar's back with lightning speed. Czar did not even look behind him as he swung his king armament with both hands, bringing with it a heaven-shaking might. The powerful energy fluctuations from the king armament caused the surrounding space to continuously tremble, as if it was unable to withstand this power and was about to collapse. Jianchen's expression became incomparably solemn. He could feel that Czar's ruler armament was several times stronger than Qin Ji, Dugafeng, and the others, let alone being hit by the ruler armament head-on. Even if it brushed past him, the consequences were not something that Jianchen could bear. Jianchen withdrew his sword and used the illusory flash, leaving behind an afterimage as he dodged the ruler armament's attack. Then he arrived behind Czar once again, thrusting his light wind sword forward like a bolt of lightning. Facing Jianchen's attack, Czar didn't make any movements to dodge. He immediately swung his ruler armament, causing space to distort as it swept towards Jianchen. Jianchen was very afraid of the ruler armament in Czar's hand. This was because he knew that even though his sword chi was powerful, it couldn't do anything to the ruler armament. Moreover, the ruler armament wasn't Czar's saint weapon. Even if it was destroyed, it wouldn't affect Czar in the slightest. So, in order to protect himself, Jianchen could only give up on attacking and dodge Czar's ruler armament. The two of them fought back and forth intensely, but strangely there wasn't a single sound. Even though the two of them had already exchanged dozens of blows, they still hadn't clashed head-on. Czar knew that Jianchen's speed was very fast, so he didn't even try to dodge Jianchen's attacks. He completely held onto the idea of exchanging blows with Jianchen. He swung his ruler armament wildly, always forcing Jianchen to give up on attacking at the most crucial moment. Jianchen had already used the illusory flash to its peak, constantly circling around Czar. After a few breaths of time, the two of them had already exchanged dozens of blows, but the result was that neither of them had been able to do anything to the other. The ruler armament in Tsar's hand emitted a powerful aura that caused Genshin to feel a great deal of fear. Knowing how powerful it was, Genshin didn't dare take the risk of fighting with Tsar, because he didn't know whether or not the ruler armament would cut him in half. But just from the ruler armament's aura alone, Genshin didn't dare let it touch his body. It wasn't worth the risk. Suddenly, Genshin's eyes flashed and he immediately retreated. His light wind sword continuously stabbed toward Tsar, only to see a purple and green sword chi shoot out from the light wind sword, one after the other, aiming for every part of Tsar's body. Tsar's body was covered with a very strong defensive armor. Even Genshin's attacks couldn't harm him, let alone Genshin's normal attacks. So, the only thing he could rely on to deal with Tsar was the purple and green sword chi. Tsar bellowed out furiously as he swung his ruler armament in an airtight manner, dispersing all of Genshin's sword chi. They dispersed into strands of energy that dispersed into the surroundings. Humph, I don't believe that I, Genshin, can't deal with you. Genshin coldly snorted. His eyes suddenly shot out a destructive light, as if there were two balls of flames dancing in his eyes. It was incomparably terrifying. In the next moment, the light wind sword left Genshin's hand and turned into a silver light. With a whoosh, it pierced toward Tsar with a terrifying speed. It was as if it had reached the speed of light, making it impossible for people to react. At this moment, Genshin was using all of his strength to control the light wind sword. The light wind sword's flight speed had reached a shocking level. The entire blade of the light wind sword was covered in a thin layer of fog, making it hard for anyone to see what it really was. Ding! Before Tsar could understand what had happened, the light wind sword had already fiercely pierced through his armor. However, Genshin had still underestimated the light wind sword's defense. He had only managed to leave a shallow mark on his armor. Although Tsar wasn't injured, the light wind sword still struck his body at a frightening speed. The powerful impact caused him to take a step back. When he saw the faint white mark on his chest, his eyes became filled with shock as he cried out, "What's going on?" What did you use to hit me?" Under Genshin's control, the light wind sword speed was so fast that Tsar couldn't even see what it was that had hit him. Genshin acted as if he didn't hear Tsar's cry of surprise. He slowly closed his eyes and used his heart to feel the light wind sword's existence. He used his mind to control the light wind sword's body. At this moment, he and the light wind sword seemed to have reached a miraculous state of mind. He was the sword and the sword was him. The two of them had completely merged into one. While Genshin was immersed in this miraculous state, the sword spirits in his dantian began to vibrate. They continuously revolved around a thumb-sized multicolored stone, silently conveying their happiness. They were like lively and mischievous children. Ding, 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 ding. A series of sounds rang throughout the entire stage. Tsar's body was standing on the stage, continuously making all kinds of strange movements. Sometimes he would stagger backwards, sometimes he would stagger forward, and sometimes he would sway left and right. There were many times when he almost fell to the ground. It was a very strange and embarrassing sight. Tsar's body was constantly emitting dazzling sparks. The radiant sacred armor that he was wearing was now densely covered with white markings. What the hell is this? What the hell is this? Tsar's face was filled with panic as he continuously roared. Genshin's mind was one with the light wind sword, and he was using all his strength to control the light wind sword. The speed of the light wind sword had completely surpassed what the naked eye could see. Thus, even though Tsar was constantly being attacked by the light wind sword, he still couldn't clearly see what the light wind sword looked like. He didn't even know what was attacking him. The light wind sword unceasingly pierced every part of Tsar's body. The high speed of the light wind sword overlapped with each other, causing Tsar to lose his balance. In the end, Tsar simply stabbed his emperor armament into the ground and relied on it to stabilize his body. He allowed the countless invisible attacks to land on his body, causing his body to continuously tremble. The radiant sacred armor's defense was abnormally strong. It was almost comparable to the barrier that protected Shi Xiangran and the others. Even after receiving countless attacks from the light wind sword, Zar was still not harmed in the slightest. What the hell is this? Zar's eyes were filled with shock as he stared blankly at Jianqin. He didn't know how many times he had let out the same roar. Right now, he didn't even need to think to know that the current situation was caused by Jianqin. Below the stage, all of the spectators held their breaths. Their eyes were wide open as they watched the scene unfold in front of them. They could only see Jianqin standing there with his eyes closed as if he was a statue. 20 meters away, Zar's emperor armament was stabbed into the ground. His right hand was tightly gripping the hilt of his emperor armament as his body continuously trembled. Dazzling sparks were constantly being emitted from his body. This strange scene caused everyone below the stage to be confused. They didn't know what the two of them were doing. Chapter 339. On the other hand, Qin Ji, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, was also surprised by the strange battle between the two. His eyes revealed a trace of suspicion as he muttered, "What are they doing?" It seems like Zar is constantly receiving attacks, but where are they coming from? Also, the sword in Jianqin's hand seems to have disappeared. It seems like this Jianqin isn't simple at all. He's even more mysterious than I thought. Qin Ji was also unable to clearly see the light wind sword. The light wind sword's flying speed had already surpassed what the naked eye could see. He could only see that Zar's body was constantly emitting dense flames. Although he didn't know what was going on, he was certain that it had something to do with Jianqin. On the other side, Ming Dong's expression, which had become serious because of Zar's king armament, relaxed a little. A faint smile appeared on his face as he muttered, "As expected of my Ming Dong's brother. He really isn't simple." Looking at the current situation, Zar's defeat was only a matter of time. You made me worry for nothing. Oh, little brother really has a lot of things hidden on his body. He was actually able to completely suppress Zar with his king armament. If Zar didn't wear that armor, he would have already died. However, what kind of ability does little brother have to be able to send out attacks that can't even be seen with the naked eye? This isn't easy to defend against. It seems like it's best if we don't become enemies with him in the future. Tianmu Ling's beautiful eyes were also closely watching the battle on the stage. She muttered in a low voice as a light flashed in her eyes. Huang Wan, who was wearing a yellow dress, also stared blankly at the motionless Jianqin on the stage. Her expression was complicated, and she couldn't help but think of the times she had spent with Jianqin. From the first time she had taken a bath by the river, to the time she had met Jianqin, to the time she had spent with Jianqin in the elimination space. Are you really that person from back then? Huang Wan was somewhat absent-minded as she looked at Jianqin's tall and straight figure. She muttered to herself in a low voice that could not be heard. She still clearly remembered that a few years ago, Jianqin was still not her opponent. He did not have the slightest bit of strength in her hands. However, she did not expect that after such a short period of time, when she met Jianqin again, Jianqin would actually grow at an inconceivable speed to a height that was far beyond her. On the stage, Zar was still tenaciously holding on, his right hand tightly gripped onto the ruler armament that was inserted into the stage, stabilizing his body. He shouted at Jianqin, "Jianqin, I have the holy armor. You can't hurt me. Don't waste your energy. Although I don't know how you did all of this, I know in my heart that you won't be able to hold on for long. Once you're exhausted, you'll definitely lose." Jianqin might have heard Zar's words, but his eyes were still tightly closed. He then moved his finger, and a faint azure sword chi appeared between his fingers. He shook his hand and shot it at Zar. Zar's movements were currently restricted, and he had to rely on the support of his ruler armament to stabilize his body. He was simply unable to make any movements to dodge. He could only helplessly watch as the azure sword chi rapidly approached him. seeing the azure sword chi. Zar could not help but feel a trace of panic. Although he was completely confident in the holy armor on his body, and unless it was a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master using a Heaven tier battle skill, it would be impossible to break it. But when he thought about how the azure sword chi could easily destroy Karaga's Saint armament, he felt a burst of uncertainty. This time he began to doubt for the first time. Could the holy armor on his body really block the azure sword chi? It was a long story, but Zar's thoughts were completed in an instant. The azure sword chi shot into Zar's chest without the slightest obstruction. Silently, a small hole appeared in the holy armor on Zar's body. The azure sword chi directly entered his body through the small hole. Zar let out a muffled groan before his entire body began to violently tremble. As soon as the tiny azure sword chi entered his body, it immediately began to rampage through his body. Wherever it passed, Zar's organs would all be crushed. Arg! Zar angrily roared at the sky as the veins on his forehead bulged. He used all the saint force in his body to wrap around the sword chi that was rampaging through his body in an attempt to destroy it. However, although the sword chi was small, it was so powerful that it made Zar feel fear. He used all the saint force in his body to wrap around the sword chi, but not only was it unable to destroy it, it was instead destroyed by the sword chi. It was simply impossible to destroy it. The sword chi continued to rampage through Zar's body, constantly destroying his life force. The insides of the human body were the weakest and most fatal parts of the body. Under the sword chi's crazy destruction, Zar was heavily injured in just a breath's time. What kind of strange power is this? Quick, take it back. Take it back. Zar's eyes suddenly revealed a look of fear as he yelled at Jianshin. This was because the azure sword chi was actually heading towards his heart. Once the sword chi got close to his heart would be crushed like tofu. Even if he was a radiant warrior, there was no way he would be able to survive. A faint silver light flashed as the light wind sword returned to Jianshin's hand. Jianshin slowly opened his eyes, revealing a trace of exhaustion. His body slightly swayed, and in a flash he appeared in front of the pained Zar. He extended his hand and gently placed it on Zar's chest. When Jianshin's hand touched Zar's chest, the sword chi that was wreaking havoc in Zar's body suddenly turned into a docile little lamb. Then, like a very obedient child, it obediently returned to Jianshin's body through Jianshin's hand and returned to the sword spirits in his dantian. Finding that the sword chi that was wreaking havoc in his body had already disappeared, Zar let out a sigh of relief. He stared at Jianshin in shock and asked with a trembling voice, "What kind of power is this? It's actually so strong. No wonder it could break through my radiant sacred armor so easily." "Zar, it seems that I've won this battle," Jianshin said with a smile. Zar knew that Jianshin wouldn't say anything about the sword chi, so he didn't waste any more time on it. He dispiritedly nodded and said, "You've won." After saying that, the radiant sacred armor on Zar's body disappeared. Only now could Zar's face be seen clearly. His face was pale and his expression was gloomy. The clothes in front of his chest had already been dyed red with blood. That was where the sword chi had attacked. At this moment, the barrier that enveloped the entire ring suddenly vanished. Then, the referee's aged voice rang out from the sky. It was loud and dignified, resounding through the entire sky. Everyone in Mercenary City could hear it clearly. "I now announce that the final victor of this year's Mercenary Tournament will be Jianshin. At the same time, he will become the Mercenary King of this year's Mercenary Tournament. He will receive a Medal of Honor personally issued by Mercenary City. At the same time, he will be rewarded with a high-grade Heaven tier battle skill, a high-grade cultivation method, and half a year of cultivation in the Sacred Land. If his mercenary group hasn't reached Class A yet, they will automatically be promoted to Class A." As soon as the referee finished speaking, Mingdong finally let out a sigh of relief. A happy smile appeared on his face, while Qin Shao and the others cheered loudly in excitement. They excitedly hugged Senior and Seniorin. Not only would the champion of the mercenary tournament be rewarded generously, but they would also receive a medal of honor issued by Mercenary City, representing the Mercenary King. Many of the peak Heaven Saint Masters below the ring became envious when they heard about the generous rewards for first place. It was a high-grade Heaven tier battle skill, infinitely close to the legendary Saint tier battle skills, let alone a high-grade Heaven tier battle skill. There were very few people who possessed a basic Heaven tier battle skill among the Heaven Saint Masters below the ring. This was because these powerful battle skills were basically in the possession of large organizations and clans. It would be extremely difficult for Heaven Saint Masters without a powerful background to obtain a basic Heaven tier battle skill. Yet now, a brat who was only an Earth Saint Master had obtained a high-grade Heaven tier battle skill just by taking first place in the mercenary tournament. How could the Heaven Saint Masters, who could not obtain a basic Heaven tier battle skill even after working their entire lives, not feel envious? Sigh. This high-grade Heaven tier battle skill was obtained far too easily. To think that I've roamed the Tianyuan continent for over 100 years, I've only used high-grade Earth tier battle skills. I wonder when I'll be able to obtain a Heaven tier battle skill. A white-haired old man muttered to himself. His gaze toward Jianqin was filled with envy. He was a Heaven Saint Master. Sacred grounds. That's a place that even legendary saint rulers yearn for. I've heard that there are quite a few legendary saint tier battle skills hidden there. I wonder if that's true. It's just a pity that I won't be able to go in and take a look in my lifetime. Another Heaven Saint Master sighed. Jianqin and Czar both left the arena through the space gate at the same time. With a flash of light, Jianqin walked out of the space gate and found himself standing in the center of a large hall. An old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion was standing 5 meters in front of him with a smile on his face. It seemed that he had been waiting for a long time. The old man was dressed in plain clothes. He calmly looked at Jianqin and said with a smile, "Jianqin, congratulations on becoming this year's Mercenary King. I will take you to the armory to choose your Heaven tier battle skill and Heaven tier cultivation method. Come with me. Then I'll have to trouble Senior to lead the way." Jianqin cupped his hands in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. He then followed the old man to the back of the hall. Chapter 340. Jianqin became even more interested in the sacred grounds after hearing what the old man had said. He wondered just what was inside that was only open to saint rulers. "Senior, does the sacred grounds have legendary saint tier battle skills?" Jianqin could not help but ask out of curiosity. The old man replied, "If the sacred grounds only have saint tier battle skills, then they're not worthy of being called a sacred ground. They do have saint tier battle skills, but that's only a portion of them. All right, don't ask anymore. I can't tell you too much about the sacred grounds." The two of them remained silent for the rest of the journey. Very soon, Jianqin arrived before a small pavilion with the old man. The pavilion was not large, only taking up an area of a few hundred square meters. It was 10 meters tall, and the entire pavilion was constructed from bamboo. Traces of time had already been left behind, giving off an ancient aura. It was obvious with a single glance that it had existed for quite a long time. On the door of the pavilion hung a simple signboard with the words Armory, written in a flamboyant style. Jianqin studied the building and was secretly surprised. He had never thought that the bamboo building would actually be the arsenal where Heaven tier battle skills were stored. It did not seem to have any defenses at all. The bamboo definitely isn't simple. It has actually survived for so long without rotting. If it were regular bamboo, it probably would have rotted after a few decades of wind and rain, Jianqin thought. The old man who led Jianqin stopped before the entrance. He looked at the building with mixed feelings and said, "This building has already existed for countless years. It was personally constructed by the founder of Mercenary City, Mo Tianyan. It is an extremely sacred place in Mercenary City, no less than a sacred ground. Jianqin immediately became filled with respect. He carefully studied the building again. Unlike before, Jianqin's eyes were filled with solemnity and seriousness. The building before him had been personally constructed by the former greatest expert of the world, Mo Tianyin. It possessed extraordinary significance. Sigh, time is merciless. The old man suddenly sighed emotionally. After a while of silence, he turned to Jianqin and said, "This is the arsenal where our mercenary city stores a large number of books. I can only bring you up to here. Someone will receive you in the arsenal after this." "Thank you, Senior." Jianqin clasped his hands. Creak! Suddenly, the wooden door of the building opened by itself, revealing the bright space inside. Afterward, a voice rang out from inside. "Jianqin, come in and choose your reward. Also, take off your shoes and leave them outside. Do not bring any dust into the arsenal." Jianqin became slightly stunned when he heard that. He had never thought that he would need to take off his shoes to choose a battle skill in the arsenal. This was the first time he had heard of something like this. Although he found it extremely strange, Jianqin did not hesitate. He quickly took off his shoes and left them outside before entering the building barefoot. The interior of the building was extremely bright and clean. It was completely spotless. Many bookshelves were placed neatly inside, all of them bearing the marks of time. They were simple and unadorned, so it was easy to tell with a single glance that they had existed for many years. However, due to the unique material of the bookshelves, they had not decayed. There were many bookshelves in the arsenal, basically taking up the entire building. Every single book was completely made from beast hide. They varied in thickness, with the thicker ones being 3 inches thick, while the thinner ones only having around a dozen pages. Jianqin looked around and quickly discovered a figure. It was an old man in gray robes. He stood in the middle of the bookshelves, carefully taking out every single book and gently wiping them. He was extremely serious. In his eyes, the books seemed to be peerless treasures. Jianqin stood there silently. He did not disturb the old man, although the old man seemed extremely ordinary, giving off the feeling that he was an ordinary person who did not know any martial arts. Jianqin was not naive enough to believe that the old man was an ordinary person. There were heaven-tier battle skills hidden in the arsenal. So how could someone who could guard the arsenal be an ordinary person? The old man did not seem to notice Jianqin's arrival. He continued to focus on taking out books from the bookshelves. After carefully wiping them, he put them back to their original state and repeated the action. Fortunately, the old man did not make Jianqin wait for too long. Once he finished wiping all the books on the bookshelves, he slowly made his way towards Jianqin at a steady pace. "I am Jianqin. Greetings, Senior." Jianqin hurriedly clasped his hands when he saw the old man walking towards him. However, the old man did not even glance at Jianqin. He walked past him and said, "The heaven-tier battle skills are all on the top floor. Come with me." "Yes, Senior." Jianqin did not dare to tarry and hurriedly followed behind the old man. "You have to be careful. Don't damage anything here," said the old man. The old man in front spoke. Although his tone was calm, it contained a kind of irresistible majesty. Jianqin hurriedly nodded. He also knew how important this pavilion was to the elders of Mercenary City. If he really damaged this pavilion, even the slightest bit, there would probably be a lot of trouble. Jianqin carefully followed behind the old man. He knew how precious this pavilion was. Even his footsteps were very light, not daring to step too heavily. Soon, Jianqin followed the old man to the highest floor of the pavilion. There were 4 bookshelves there, and the number of books on the shelves varied. The bigger ones had several hundred books, while the smaller ones only had a few dozen books. The old man suddenly pulled out a thin booklet and passed it to Jianqin. He said, "All the heaven-tier battle skills and cultivation methods are recorded here. There are notes on the back of each cultivation method. You can tell me once you've made your choice. Jianqin took the booklet from the old man and flipped through it page by page. The old man was right. The booklet recorded the names of the various heavens in the heaven realm, as well as their characteristics and functions. In such a small booklet, there were actually several dozen heaven tier battle skills, and there were actually over 100 heaven tier cultivation methods. Jianqin was dumbfounded as he read through it all. He was astounded. Heaven tier battle skills were extremely valuable outside. Every single one of them was a treasure, and their value could not be measured with money. However, heaven tier battle skills were as common as rice in the armory of Mercenary City. There were several dozen of them. If this matter made it out, the entire Tianyuan continent would probably be shaken up. Senior, there are so many heaven tier battle skills here. Has no one ever come to steal them? Suddenly, Jianqin asked an idiotic question. A sliver of disdain appeared in the old man's eyes when he heard that, but he said nothing. Only now did Jianqin realize that he had asked a very idiotic question. It was not that no one coveted the battle skills in Mercenary City, but that no one had the ability to steal them. Afterward, Jianqin no longer wasted any more words. He began to carefully choose the battle skills and cultivation methods. After an incense stick's worth of time, Jianqin finally chose a high-grade heaven tier battle skill and a high-grade cultivation method and reported them to the old man. Without saying anything else, the old man directly walked to the bookshelves and took out 2 books. He handed them to Jianqin and said, "These are what you want." Jianqin extended his trembling hands to receive the 2 books, one thick and one thin. These were a high-level heaven tier battle skill and a high-level heaven tier cultivation method. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined that he would be able to obtain a heaven tier battle skill so easily. The heaven tier battle skill that Jianqin had chosen was called the 9-layered clouds. It was a high-level heaven tier battle skill that was suitable for anyone to learn. It was not like some other battle skills that had extremely strict requirements on the attribute of Saint Force and the weapon used. The 9-layered clouds had a total of 9 forms, and the power of each form was multiplied. It was said that the 9th form, which was the strongest, had the ability to shatter the heavens. Its power could be described as earth-shaking. After leaving the armory, the old man who had led Jianqin the way continued to wait outside. Afterward, Jianqin returned with the old man. On the way back, the old man said, "The sacred grounds will open in 3 days. Someone will come pick you up in 3 days, so it's best if you don't leave Mercenary City during these 3 days." "Yes, Senior." The old man did not bring Jianqin back to the original hall. Instead, he brought Jianqin to a space door and had Jianqin leave through it. Looking at the space door in front of him, Jianqin muttered to himself. Could it be that he was not in Mercenary City but in another space? With these questions in mind, Jianqin directly stepped through the space door and appeared in front of the huge square in the center of Mercenary City. Unlike before, the huge ring in the center of the square had disappeared without a trace. It had probably sunk into the ground again. The square was still surrounded by a sea of people. Less than 2 hours had passed since the end of the competition, but the spectators had not all left yet. Although not much time had passed since the end of the tournament, Mercenary City had already announced the top 10 experts of this year's Mercenary Tournament. A large white canvas was hung in the air, and on it were written in black calligraphy. They were the names of the top 10 winners of this year's Mercenary Tournament. First place was naturally Jianqin, hanging high up at the top of the list. Second place was Czar, and third place was Mingdong. Look, isn't that the living first place of this year's tournament, Jianqin? Suddenly, a sharp-eyed young man discovered Jianqin and immediately cried out in surprise. Hearing his voice, the surrounding people all looked over. The white-clothed Jianqin immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. All sorts of gazes of envy, jealousy, and worship were directed at Jianqin. A few pretty young girls looked at Jianqin with undisguised adoration. Chapter 341. Jianqin pushed through the crowd and finally squeezed through the sea of people with great effort before returning to the inn he had rested in earlier. In the inn, there were still people eating in twos and threes, drinking and chatting with each other. The content of their conversation, without exception, revolved around Jianqin and the rewards for the champion of the mercenary tournament. I never thought that first place would actually be taken by Jianqin. I heard that he's only a second cycle Earth Saint Master, but he actually defeated Tsar, a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master with Saint Force of the Light attribute. Unbelievable. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man. He looked gentle and refined, with a dignified appearance. At first glance, he looked like an intellectual who had read a lot of books and poems. Yeah, I never thought that Jianqin would actually be able to defeat Tsar, causing me to lose 3,000 purple coins. If I had known earlier that Jianqin would win, I would have bet on Jianqin winning. A burly man fiercely gulped down a mouthful of strong alcohol. His face was filled with indignation, as if he was still angry about the 3,000 purple coins he had lost. Haha, Z, your 3,000 purple coins are nothing. Compared to someone who lost 1,000,000 purple coins, it's just a drop in the ocean. The refined, middle-aged man chuckled. Sitting at another table were 4 middle-aged men dressed as mercenaries. One of them let out a long sigh and lamented, "Sigh, that's a heaven-tier battle skill. To think that we wouldn't even be able to obtain a heaven-tier battle skill in our entire lives. Yet it was so easily obtained by Jianqin. I'm so envious. Brother, we can only blame ourselves for being born at a bad time. Otherwise, we would have been able to participate in the mercenary tournament as well. In your dreams, do you think first place is so easy to obtain? Didn't you see that many people who were much stronger than us were eliminated from the top 10? Even if we participated in the mercenary tournament right now, it would be very difficult for us to enter the top 100. That's right. Without abnormal strength, it's best not to think about this problem. With how large the Tianyuan continent is, there's no lack of geniuses, especially those who have been nurtured by large organizations since they were young. Every single one of them has abnormal strength, reaching the Earth Saint Master realm at such a young age and possessing profound cultivation methods and powerful battle skills. Didn't you see that person called Jianqin? He grasped a high-level heaven-tier battle skill at such a young age, yet he was only ranked 3rd. Thinking about it, that first place, Jianqin, should be even stronger. He should at least have the strength to contend against a Heaven Saint Master. The few people in the restaurant were discussing animatedly, letting out sighs of envy and jealousy that couldn't be said. At this moment, a sharp-eyed person saw Jianqin walk into the inn and immediately cried out, "Everyone look, isn't that Jianqin who obtained first place in the mercenary tournament?" As soon as he finished speaking, the people who were still eating in the inn all turned their gazes to the entrance. They all stared at Jianqin, who was wearing cheap white clothes. The originally noisy inn instantly fell silent. Being stared at by so many people, Jianqin did not feel uncomfortable at all. He was already used to being stared at like this. Afterwards, Jianqin calmly walked up the stairs. When Jianqin disappeared down the stairs, the quiet people below immediately began to quietly discuss. Jianqin actually came to this inn. Do you think he's also staying here? This Jianqin is just too young. I can tell with a single glance that he's born into a large family. His natural advantages are much greater than ours. Not only is he young and promising, he's also so handsome. Jianqin was able to defeat 6th cycle Earth Saint Master Tsar at such a young age. His future achievements will definitely be limitless. The prize for first place in the mercenary tournament is definitely on Jianqin. He has at least a high-level heaven-tier battle skill and a high-level heaven-tier cultivation method on him. How enviable. Watch what you say. Be careful of what you say. Don't you know what you should say and what you shouldn't say? Some of the diners were whispering to each other while the 2 busy waiters said excitedly, "Quickly go and inform the manager that the king of mercenaries, Jianqin, is actually staying in our inn." This is a joyous occasion. Arriving on the second floor of the inn, Jianqin was directly pulled into a room by Qin Xiao and the others. They had already prepared a room filled with all sorts of delicacies to congratulate Jianqin for obtaining first place in the mercenary tournament. At the table, everyone who had interacted with Jianqin before was present. Du Gufeng, Tian Muling, Qin Ji, Yun Zheng Sr. and Ming Dong, Qin Xiao, and the Zither Master had all been waiting for a long time. Other than them, even the great elder of the Tianqin clan sat there with a smile. Everyone who had interacted with Jianqin before, aside from Huangwan, had already gathered there. At the table, everyone congratulated Jianqin. Even the great elder of the Tianqin clan's attitude towards Jianqin had changed quite a bit. He had already placed Jianqin on an extremely high level in his heart. He spoke humbly to Jianqin, Qin Ji, and Tian Muling without putting on any airs. This was because the three people at the table were people that the Tianqin clan could not afford to offend. Du Gufeng, Qin Ji, and Tian Muling all had extremely powerful organizations behind them. This organization was so powerful that the Tianqin clan could not afford to offend them. In particular, Qin Ji's identity was extremely special. After the meal, everyone left one after another. Ming Dong and Jianqin returned to Jianqin's room together. Ming Dong said, "Jianqin, I'll be leaving with my Uncle Tian in a few days to bring my parents over. As a result, we might not be able to be together for a while. It's fine. Go without worry. I just happen to need to enter the sacred land in 3 days. So I'll be delayed for half a year." Jianqin chuckled and waved his hand without minding at all. Ming Dong sat down beside Jianqin and asked, "Jianqin, I still don't know where you live after knowing you for so long. Do you want me to pass on a message to your parents?" Jianqin's expression immediately became mixed when he heard that. Ming Dong's words had awakened the memories hidden in the depths of Jianqin's head. Scenes from the past constantly appeared in his head. "It's been quite a few years since I left. I wonder if Mother and the others are doing well. There's also my brother, Changyang Hu, and my sister, Changyang Mingyue, who's always been very concerned about me. I wonder how they're doing. Changyang Mingyue should be getting married by now. It's a pity that I can't attend her wedding." Jianqin became lost in thought. He could not help but think about the past. Now he suddenly discovered that he wanted to go home very much. He wanted to go home and see his family. It had been quite a few years since he left Changyang Prefecture. A strange light flickered through Ming Dong's eyes when he saw Jianqin become lost in thought. He could tell from Jianqin's expression that there was probably a story behind Jianqin. Ming Dong placed one hand on Jianqin's shoulder and looked at him in concern. He softly asked, "Jianqin, what's wrong? If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. I will definitely do my best to help you. Even if I can't help you, I can ask Uncle Tian for help." Jianqin's heart warmed when he heard Ming Dong's words. He gently shook his head and said, "It's nothing. I just thought of a few things from the past." Jianqin wanted to resolve the matter of the Huayun sect with his own strength. Although he knew that if he asked Ming Dong's Uncle Tian for help, the matter would be resolved very quickly. He might even be able to resolve the crisis the kingdom of Jessin was currently facing. However, he did not want to do that. The Huayun sect had forced him to leave home alone at the age of 15. This was an unforgettable hatred for Jianqin. He needed to resolve it with his own strength. He needed to use his own strength to make the Huayun sect come back to life. He didn't need to rely on external help. Jianqin inwardly sighed. He took out the heaven-seizing fortune art from his spatial ring and said, "Ming Dong, your home isn't far from the kingdom of Jessin. So, I hope that when you return, you can make a trip to the kingdom of Jessin and personally hand this heaven-tier battle skill to the patriarch of Lore City's Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Ba." Jianqin originally wanted to ask Ming Dong to bring back the heaven-tier battle skill 9 layered clouds that he had just obtained from the armory. But after thinking about it, he decided to only bring back the Heaven Tier Battle Skill, Seizing Fortune Art. Because Heaven Tier Battle Skills were just too precious, he was afraid that the news of Changyang Prefecture having 2 Heaven Tier Battle Skills would spread and attract the attention of some people. Although the Changyang Prefecture wasn't weak, they still didn't have the power to protect both Heaven Tier Battle Skills, especially when one of them was a High Tier Battle Skill. So, Genshin decided to only let Mingdong bring back 1 Heaven Tier Battle Skill. Because of the Heaven Seizing Fortune Art's special nature, it would be very difficult for others to notice that it was a Heaven Tier Battle Skill. This was a battle skill that directly increased one's fighting strength. It was very hard to tell from its appearance, and it was very hidden. It wasn't like other Heaven Tier Battle Skills that would create a world-shaking aura when used. Mingdong took the Heaven Seizing Fortune Art from Genshin and tightly held it in his hand. He solemnly said, "Don't worry, Genshin. I will definitely personally hand this battle skill over to Changyang Prefecture's Changyangba. Remember, the matter of the Heaven Tier Battle Skill must be kept a secret." Mingdong left in a hurry. The next morning, he was respectfully invited away by a young man from Mercenary City. At the same time, the Zither Master and the Zither Master left Mercenary City with the Great Elder of the Tianqing clan. Although Tianzhou didn't show up, the Great Elder was certain that something had happened to Tianzhou. Apart from letting out a sorrowful sigh, he didn't pursue the matter any further. It was very common for accidents to happen when collecting tokens. Even if he knew that Tianzhou had been killed, he wouldn't be able to find the culprit. Dugufeng also bid farewell to Genshin before leaving Mercenary City with his ruler armament in the company of several elders. Before leaving, Genshin also left the meeting location. Chapter 342. A red couplet hung high above the inn where Genshin was temporarily staying. There was a line of words written on it, which was nothing more than praise for the current mercenary king, Genshin. It also stated that the mercenary king Genshin was currently staying in the inn. Not only did it praise Genshin, but it was also a small advertisement for the inn, increasing its fame. The owner of the inn generously waived all of Genshin's expenses, treating Genshin like the ruler of a kingdom. He was so respectful that even Genshin was not used to it. There were many times when he wanted to move. Now that the mercenary tournament had just ended, Genshin obviously became the focus of everyone's attention. Basically, everyone in Mercenary City knew that Genshin was temporarily staying in the inn called Ku Lai Xiang after the owner's actions. Many people wandered around the inn in order to catch a glimpse of Genshin's elegance up close, or for other reasons. Some even sat in the inn for long periods of time. In short, the clever owner of the inn had successfully made the unknown and famous in Mercenary City. As Genshin's residence was exposed, countless people came to visit him in the beginning. Many people invited him warmly, but in the end, Genshin did not get tired of it. He closed his door and told the owner that he needed to rest for the next few days and would not see any guests. At the same time, he forbade anyone from visiting him, or he would move. The owner of the inn was quite frightened by Chen's request. He had finally managed to get a god to stay in his tiny territory, so how could he let Chen leave so easily? As a result, he agreed to Chen's request without hesitation. He sent a few workers to completely seal off the floor where Chen stayed, forbidding anyone from going up. Even if Chen was a peak Heaven Saint Master, they would not let him pass. After all, this was Mercenary City, so no one dared to start a fight here. In the past few days, Genshin had shut himself in his room and devoted himself to learning the illusory flash. Although he could already use the basics of the illusory flash, he still hadn't grasped the basics. The illusory flash was extremely profound. It was several times more complex and difficult to understand than the heaven-seizing fortune art. Therefore, after these past few days, Genshin still hadn't grasped the basics. He had only grasped a little bit of it. Even so, his speed had increased by a lot. As his understanding of the illusory flash deepened, Genshin felt more and more that he might be able to travel 1,000 kilometers in an instant if he really did reach the highest level of the illusory flash. 3 days passed in a hurry. Early in the morning, an internal member of Mercenary City found Genshin and politely invited Genshin out. Genshin followed the youth to a palace-like building near the plaza. The person who received Genshin had already changed. It was a middle-aged man with a resolute expression. "Esteemed Sir Genshin, I have come to receive you on the orders of the elders. Please follow me." The middle-aged man had a respectful expression as he led Genshin through one building after another until they finally arrived at a spatial door. "Esteemed Sir Genshin, you need to go through this spatial door to another space." "The elders are all there," said the middle-aged man. Genshin thanked him and directly stepped into the spatial door. Genshin had already experienced the power of Mercenary City, so when he heard that he needed to go through a spatial door to another space, he didn't find it strange at all. He was already numb to it. With a flash of light, Genshin reappeared in a garden filled with the fragrance of flowers. 50 meters in front of him, 2 white-robed old men sat there playing chess. Genshin recognized both of them. One of them was the person who had given out tokens to the several 100,000 participants that day, as well as the mysterious referee at the end of the single elimination tournament. The other was the old man who had led him to the armory to choose battle skills. Genshin looked around again and discovered that he was surrounded by a sea of flowers. Countless multicolored butterflies swam through the flowers, making it seem like a paradise. Apart from the 2 old men in the pavilion up ahead, there was no one else. Genshin knew what to do without even thinking. He gently made his way to the pavilion and watched the 2 old men play chess quietly. He said nothing, nor did he make any noise. The 2 old men continued to play chess calmly. They were completely focused on their game, as if they had not noticed Genshin at all. Genshin waited for over 2 hours. The 2 old men finally finished their game as well. A sliver of helplessness appeared on their faces. "It's actually a draw again. Old Hui, it seems like it won't be easy for the 2 of us to decide the victor in this game." The old man who led Genshin to the armory smiled bitterly. He picked up the chess pieces one by one and placed them into the box. The old man called Old Hui also had a bitter smile on his face as he said, "That's right. The 2 of us are on par with each other. It will be difficult to determine the victor." Very soon, the 2 old men cleaned up the chess pieces and stood up at the same time. The old man who had led Genshin to the armory glanced at the sky and said, "It's about time. We should go." Old Hui nodded. "Then let's go. Kid, come with us." The last sentence was obviously for Genshin. "Yes, senior." Genshin hurriedly clasped his hands. The 2 old men before him were peak heaven saint masters at the very least, especially the old man who was the referee. Genshin had wondered whether he was a saint ruler or not more than once. Genshin was as insignificant as an ant before someone like that. Old Hui chuckled when he heard Genshin call him senior. "Kid, you're called Genshin, right? You can just call me the 13th elder. You can call this person the 18th elder. There's no need to call him senior." "Yes, elders." Genshin hurriedly clasped his hands. At the same time, he was surprised by how many elders there were in Mercenary City. He had never thought that the 18th elder would actually be the 18th elder. Genshin followed the 2 old men through the world of flowers. After traveling over a dozen kilometers, he left through a space gate in the end. When he reappeared, Genshin had already arrived on a desolate plain. A tall altar stood nearby. There were many spirit tablets on the altar, numbering in the thousands. In front of those altars, there were already 8 people who had arrived early. Each of them stood there in a daze, looking at the spirit tablets in a trance. Among the 8 people, there was a middle-aged man with a medium build, a middle-aged woman who seemed to be in her 40s, and an old woman who seemed to be in her 70s or 80s at the very least. The remaining 5 people were all old men in their 80s without exception. The 8 of them had completely returned to their original state. Their presences were completely concealed, making them seem ordinary. There was nothing special about them at all. These 8 people are all internal elders of Mercenary City. They hold important statuses in Mercenary City. The 8th elder whispered to Jianqin. Jianqin immediately became stern. Sure enough, no one who could make it here was ordinary. The sacred land will only open at 1:15 noon. Let's wait here for a while. Moreover, apart from us old men, there are many other capable friends of Mercenary City who haven't come yet, the 8th elder said in a low voice. Then he and the 18th elder arrived in front of the altar and looked at the memorial tablet in a daze. Jianqin stood behind them, silently. However, he studied the spirit tablets curiously. He was extremely curious. At this moment, the sound of something rushing through the air rang out in the distance. A woman in an azure dress quickly flew over from afar with a zither in her arms. She landed near Jianqin very soon. The woman was tall and slender, with a head of black hair that cascaded down naturally. Her face was covered with a green veil, and only a pair of limpid eyes could be seen. Her eyes were bright and captivating. Her slender fingers gently stroked the strings of the zither, as delicate as fine jade. Her slender waist was incomparably soft, and gently swayed along with her graceful steps. Even though he couldn't see her face, just the figure that was revealed was enough to determine that this woman must be a devastatingly beautiful woman who could cause the downfall of a country. The woman walked behind the elders of Mercenary City leisurely and said, "I've come to disturb you again." The woman's voice was extremely beautiful. It was as pleasant as the heavens, yet it also seemed like heavenly music. It was impossible for it to exist in this world. Jianqin became dazed when he heard the woman's voice. He had never thought that there would actually be such a beautiful voice in the world. It was indescribably beautiful. A voice like that should not exist in this world. The elders of Mercenary City all turned around when they heard the woman's voice. The middle-aged man immediately clasped his hands and smiled. After 50 years, the heavenly enchantress is even more beautiful than before. The woman replied, "You're too kind, 15th elder. Heavenly enchantress, after 50 years, you're even more beautiful than before." The middle-aged woman also smiled at the woman. Her eyes were filled with amazement. "He, the heavenly enchantress, is a peerless beauty. She's beautiful enough to outshine the moon and embarrass the flowers. She's a true goddess on the Tianyuan continent. In terms of beauty, all flowers pale in comparison to the heavenly enchantress." An old man chuckled. Hearing this, the rest of the people also revealed a trace of a smile on their faces, and they all praised the green-clothed woman. The heavenly enchantress, the heavenly enchantress. Is this woman the heavenly enchantress that the second young lady of the Tianqin clan spoke of? Hearing what the elders said, Jianqin's body trembled. He stared at the beautiful woman in disbelief. His heart was like a turbulent sea, unable to remain calm. Chapter 343. Jianqin had heard about the heavenly enchantress from the second miss of the Tianqin clan before. The heavenly enchantress was a legendary woman on the Tianyuan continent. She was peerless in her generation and devastatingly beautiful. Her zither skills were unrivaled. She could make many experts on the Tianyuan continent pale when they talked about her. Just the sound of her zither was enough to make people lose themselves in illusions and even obliterate their souls, leading to the destruction of their souls. Besides that, the heavenly enchantress had played a song in the air above the battlefield in order to stop a war between 2 countries. In just a few seconds, she had made over 1 million soldiers sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. It was extremely terrifying. The heavenly enchantress had become a saint ruler long ago and was now a saint ruler. A person like her had already stood at the apex of the Tianyuan continent, looking down on all life. Jianchen had never thought that he would be lucky enough to see the heavenly enchantress today. He struggled to remain calm because of this. After all, this was a saint ruler standing in front of him. Moreover, she was a legendary woman. Although the heavenly enchantress had covered her face, it was not enough to hide her beauty. Just her slender figure was indescribably beautiful, so beautiful that it was suffocating. It was as if she should not exist in this world. Even with Jianchen's willpower, he struggled to shift his gaze away from the heavenly enchantress the moment he saw her. It was as if she was the only thing in the world. Although she just stood there, she was enough to make the world lose its color and flowers wither. The heavenly enchantress seemed to notice Jianchen's gaze. She slightly turned her head and glanced at Jianchen. Surprise flashed through her eyes, and she softly said in a melodious voice, "Elders, this must be the king of the mercenaries this year." The 8th elder chuckled. The heavenly enchantress has guessed correctly. He's Jianchen, the king of the mercenaries this year. Although he's only an Earth Saint Master of the first cycle, his potential is limitless. His future accomplishments will definitely not be any weaker than ours. The heavenly enchantress nodded slightly before falling silent. She seemed to have lost interest in Jianchen. She stared at the altar filled with memorial tablets in a daze. The light in her eyes seemed to become rather dazed. Jianchen was slightly surprised by how the elders treated the heavenly enchantress as equals. He could not help but think of what the 13th elder had said. The sacred grounds were only open to saint rulers. If anyone below saint ruler wanted to enter, they had to obtain the title of king of the mercenaries. In other words, the 10 elders of Mercenary City are all saint rulers. Even the 13th elder who brought me to the armory is a saint ruler, Jianchen thought to himself. When he reached this conclusion, even Jianchen felt inexplicably shocked. These were 10 saint rulers. Mercenary City was actually so powerful that it was terrifying. Afterwards, another dozen or so people arrived one after another. From how the 10 elders of Mercenary City addressed them, Jianchen understood their identities. Other than the 2 elders of Mercenary City, the others all belonged to other organizations. They all seemed to have special ties with Mercenary City. Now, there were 26 people present aside from Jianchen. There were both men and women, and most of them were old people in their 70s. There were also a few middle-aged men who seemed to be in their 40s. However, the person who attracted the most attention was still the heavenly enchantress. She stood out among the crowd with her beauty. Now, there was still an hour before noon. At this time, another person flew over and landed in front of everyone. It was a young man. He wore luxurious white robes and seemed to be in his 20s. He was extremely young. The young man was handsome, enough to be compared to Jianchen. However, his handsomeness possessed a hint of femininity, which was very different from Jianchen's masculine handsomeness. As soon as the young man landed, he smiled resplendently and made his way toward the azure-robed heavenly enchantress. He clasped his hands and said, "Heavenly enchantress, we haven't seen each other in 50 years. You really are becoming more and more beautiful." The young man looked at the heavenly enchantress with deep infatuation. He did not even try to hide the adoration in his eyes. The heavenly enchantress frowned slightly when she heard that. A sliver of disgust appeared in her eyes, and she did not even glance at the young man. She nonchalantly replied, "Thank you for your praise, King Qijian." The young man did not mind the heavenly enchantress attitude at all. He arrived in front of the heavenly enchantress with a smile and stared at her watery eyes in infatuation. Suddenly, his voice became extremely gentle. "Heavenly enchantress, we've known each other for 200 years now. When can I invite you to visit 3 Saint Island? I've long heard that the heavenly enchantress lives on 3 Saint Island, an otherworldly paradise. There's no conflict there, no deception. There's only a group of peaceful fishermen. It's a paradise that has transcended the mortal world, which is something that even I yearn for. I've always wanted to live a life without conflict and intrigue. Hearing Bai Shou's words, the 20 or so people present revealed helpless expressions. Bai Shou's admiration for the heavenly enchantress was no secret among them. Back then, Bai Shou's appearance was that of a middle-aged man. From the moment he saw the heavenly enchantress, he fell in love with her at first sight. After returning, he used a secret technique to forcefully change his appearance to his current appearance. His goal was to win the heavenly enchantress's heart. Unfortunately, the heavenly enchantress completely ignored Bai Shou's passion. Moreover, she was always indifferent to Bai Shou's passion. Over time, Bai Shou actually started to loathe heavenly enchantress. Apologies, King Qijian. Our three-saint island does not welcome outsiders, the heavenly enchantress said coldly. King Qijian did not become discouraged. He said innocently, Heavenly enchantress, am I an outsider as well? Of course, the heavenly enchantress replied without any hesitation, not giving King Qijian any face at all. King Qijian's eyes revealed a sliver of helplessness when he saw how cold the heavenly enchantress was. He raised his head to the sky and sighed before standing silently beside the heavenly enchantress. He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected in his pursuit of the heavenly enchantress. However, no matter how difficult it was, he would never give up. At this moment, the space in front of the altar began to fluctuate in an extremely unstable manner. Surging waves of energy slowly gathered without anyone guiding them. It's noon. The sacred land is about to open, an elder of Mercenary City said loudly. Everyone's gazes gathered there at practically the same time. The energy there became denser and denser, more and more powerful. In the end, even the space seemed to be unable to withstand it and began to distort. After a few breaths of time, the energy there finally surpassed the limits of what the space could withstand. Space was torn apart, and the surging energy forcefully opened a 10-meter wide door. Inside the door was chaos and nothing could be seen. The door to the sacred land has opened. Everyone go in. An elder from Mercenary City called out to everyone before bowing respectfully to the sacred land's gate. He strode in and disappeared into the chaotic sacred land's gate. After that, the rest of the elders of Mercenary City bowed respectfully to the gate of the Holy Land before disappearing into the gate of the Holy Land. Once all the elders of Mercenary City had entered, the saint rulers all followed the example of the elders of Mercenary City. They respectfully and sincerely bowed to the door before entering in the end. Jianchen was the last one to enter. Although he did not understand why everyone had to bow to the door, he also followed their example and bowed to the door before stepping into the chaotic door. When Jianchen appeared once again, he discovered that he was standing in a rather gloomy place. The air there was different from outside. It was a little colder and moist. Jianchen looked around and discovered that he could not see the sky above him. There was a huge rock 100 meters above him. He seemed to be standing in the middle of a hollowed-out mountain. A translucent, crystal-like object hovered in the air above the mountain. It shone with a hazy white light and pulsed with extremely pure energy. The eighth elder just happened to be beside Jianchen. Jianchen asked out of curiosity, "Eighth elder, is this the sacred land?" The eighth elder nodded. "Yes, this is the sacred land. You must have seen that it's in the middle of a mountain." "Correct. The sacred land is indeed in the middle of a mountain. It's in an independent space created by the city lord of Mercenary City, Mo Tianyan. The only way to enter the sacred land is through the only naturally formed door. There's no other way aside." Jianchen carefully studied the sacred land again. He had never thought that it would be related to Mo Tianyan again. At this moment, the eighth elder looked at the translucent object hovering in the air and slowly raised his hand. The object seemed to be drawn by a mysterious force, slowly drifting toward the eighth elder's hand. In the end, it hovered before the eighth elder's hand. Jianchen looked at the object and saw that it was a triangular object. It was only the size of a thumb and was translucent like a crystal. It emitted extremely pure energy, as if the entire crystal was formed from pure energy. Eighth Elder, what is this? Jianchen could not help but ask out of curiosity. Chapter 344. This item is nurtured in the sacred grounds, and only one is produced once every 50 years. We call this item the mercenary's heart, and it's only given to the mercenary king. It's just not announced to the public, explained the eighth elder. The eighth elder explained, the mercenary's heart is completely condensed from the energy of the sacred grounds through an extremely special method. If you absorb it, not only will your strength greatly increase, but it will also strengthen your mental force. However, this is only effective for saint rulers and below. The weaker you are, the greater the benefits. With that, the eighth elder placed the mercenary's heart in Jianchen's hand. He said, directly swallow it and then refine it in the first region. Your strength should increase by quite a bit. Yes, eighth elder. Jianchen did not hesitate and directly swallowed the thumb-sized mercenary's heart. Remember, the mercenary's heart must be completely refined in the sacred grounds. If you leave the sacred grounds with the mercenary's heart, the energy within it will rapidly disperse. The eighth elder reminded Jianchen seriously. I understand. Thank you for your reminder, eighth elder. Jianchen clasped his hands in thanks, but he was surprised inside. The mercenary's heart was just too strange. It could not be taken outside, and it was ineffective against saint rulers. It seemed like it was the strange restrictions of the mercenary's heart that made it an additional reward for the mercenary king, because only the mercenary king had the right to enter the sacred grounds below saint rulers. The sacred grounds are divided into a total of 4 regions. The flow of time in the first region is 10 times faster than outside. If you cultivate there for 10 months, only a month will have passed outside. If you just want to cultivate saint force or comprehend some heaven tier battle skill, the first region is your best choice. The second region is where you comprehend the 6 origin energies of the world. It'll be much easier to comprehend origin energy there, so it won't be of much help to you right now. The third and fourth zones are where the essence of the sacred grounds lies. The most precious items of the sacred grounds are all there. The third zone contains saint tier battle skills and some powerful cultivation methods created by seniors that are comparable to saint tier battle skills. It's very difficult for anyone below saint ruler to comprehend them, so they're completely useless to you. As for the fourth zone, it contains all sorts of cultivation experiences left behind by the deceased seniors of Mercenary City, as well as their comprehension of cultivation in their later years. It's useless to you because you can't come into contact with things at that level. The mysteries within are not something you can understand at all. As a result, the zone most suitable for you is the first zone. Cultivating there for half a year is equivalent to cultivating outside for 5 years. The eighth elder explained to Jianchen. He was the host of this year's Mercenary Grand Tournament, so he was in charge of all these matters. He had the obligation to explain some of the matters of the Holy Land to the newcomers, and this was not a special treatment for Jianchen. After saying everything that needed to be said, the eighth elder left as well. He vanished from Jianchen's sight very quickly, leaving only Jianchen standing there in a daze. Jianchen looked around and discovered that the saint rulers who had come with him had all vanished. He was the only one standing there in the vast space. Jianchen did not want to waste any precious time. He followed the eighth elder's directions to the first zone. His priority right now was to refine the mercenary's heart within him. When Jianchen entered the first zone, he immediately felt that the space there was different from outside. He felt rather uncomfortable as soon as he entered, as if there was something Jianchen could not understand in here. This should be the first zone now. Time is 10 times faster than outside, Jianchen mumbled to himself. He did not stop walking. He constantly made his way into the depths because the energy there was denser. Very soon, Jianchen arrived in the very depths. He casually glanced around and suddenly froze. He saw an azure figure sitting 50 meters away. It was the heavenly enchantress. Jianqin stared at the heavenly enchantress from afar. Even though he could only see her back, it was unable to hide her stunning and noble presence. After a slight hesitation, Jianqin slowly made his way toward the heavenly enchantress. When he was 20 meters away from her, Jianqin suddenly felt that the energy there was even denser. As he approached the heavenly enchantress, the energy rapidly increased in density. Jianqin knew where the heavenly enchantress was without even thinking. She was in the center of the first zone, where the energy was the densest. Jianqin stopped 10 meters away from the heavenly enchantress before sitting down on the ground. Although he knew that the closer he got to the heavenly enchantress, the denser the energy would basically multiply, he did not dare to get any closer. Senior, there are Saint tier battle skills and some cultivation notes left behind in the sacred land. Why don't you go there to comprehend them instead of cultivating here? Jianqin asked the heavenly enchantress in confusion. To Saint rulers, Saint tier battle skills and the cultivation notes left behind by their predecessors should be extremely valuable. Yet the heavenly enchantress had chosen to cultivate her saint force here. She clearly stood out from the crowd. The heavenly enchantress remained seated with her eyes closed, as if she had not heard Jianqin at all. Jianqin still did not receive an answer after quite a while. He knew that saint rulers were probably extremely prideful, so they would not waste their breath on a puny earth saint master like him. As a result, he did not ask any more questions and directly closed his eyes to refine the mercenary's heart within him. I've walked the path of the zither, using sound against my enemies. It's completely different from them, so the battle skills and cultivation notes are not suitable for me. They won't be of much help to me. Just as Jianqin closed his eyes, the heavenly enchantress' voice rang out in his head. Her voice was pleasant, but there was a sliver of coldness in her voice. Jianqin suddenly opened his eyes and discovered that the heavenly enchantress was still sitting there without moving at all. Her face was covered by a layer of sand that concealed her beauty. Before Jianqin could say anything, the heavenly enchantress said, "Since you're the mercenary king this time, you must have obtained a mercenary's heart. It's a rare treasure for someone of your strength. It contains fragments of the mysteries of the world, so it'll be extremely helpful to you when you reach Saint Ruler in the future." The heavenly enchantress' eyes remained closed. She did not even glance at Jianqin. "Thank you for telling me, Senior." Jianqin clasped his hands. "There's no need to call me Senior. Everyone outside calls me the heavenly enchantress." The heavenly enchantress nonchalantly replied. Her voice was just as cold as before. Afterward, the heavenly enchantress stopped talking. Jianqin lost interest after failing to obtain an answer from a few more questions. He just closed his eyes and began to refine the mercenary's heart. The mercenary's heart was extremely wondrous. Not only would absorbing the energy within increase the strength of his saint force, but it would also greatly increase his mental strength. The mercenary's heart seemed to contain an extremely wondrous energy. When Jianqin absorbed the energy, it would fuse with his soul and strengthen his mind. At the same time, it also contained some inexplicable things. It seemed to be the fragments of the mysteries of the world that the heavenly enchantress had mentioned. 1 month in the sacred ground was 10 months outside. Jianqin spent 2 months in the sacred ground before finally completely refining the mercenary's heart. His strength also rapidly increased, reaching the 3rd cycle of Earth Saint Master. He was at the peak of the 3rd cycle, infinitely close to the 4th cycle. Aside from the increase in strength, Jianqin's mind had also become much stronger. Compared to before, his mind had become a 3rd stronger. This was an extremely terrifying number, causing Jianqin to go wild with joy. Moreover, with the complete absorption of the mercenary's heart, many more things appeared in Jianqin's mind. Sometimes they would form a mysterious light that flashed through his mind. It was very difficult to grasp. It seemed to be related to some of the mysteries of the world, but it also seemed to be something else. Jianqin could only vaguely feel it, although he knew that these things were the fragments of the mysteries of the world that the heavenly enchantress had mentioned. Jianqin could not understand them at all. It could be said that he was completely guarding a huge treasure trove. He was unable to find the key to open it, so he could not obtain what was inside. 2 months later, when Jianqin opened his eyes, he discovered that the heavenly enchantress was still cultivating where she had been before. Jianqin stood up. Now that he had successfully refined the mercenary's heart, he planned on going to the other 3 regions to take a look. Jianqin silently left and arrived in the 2nd region. There were 6 caves in the 2nd region, all of which were different. They all radiated with the dense origin energy of the 6 elements: light, darkness, fire, earth, water, and wind. Jianqin squeezed into the cave with the origin energy of light first. It was extremely bright in there, giving off a faint feeling of heat. The light seemed like the sun in the sky, possessing a sliver of warmth. However, unlike sunlight, the light actually caused Jianqin to feel a piercing pain when it shone on Jianqin. It was as if the light could kill. Jianqin could also sense the dense, radiant saint force in the cave that was filled with light origin energy. Radiant saint masters possessed great statuses on the Tianyuan continent because they could control radiant saint masters to heal people. A few powerful radiant saint masters could revive people or even bring the dead back to life. These radiant saint masters basically did not know any martial arts, so they were extremely weak. The other type of radiant warrior was also known as the Undying. Radiant warriors were born with radiant saint force and were extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent. Although they could also control radiant saint force, the radiant saint force they controlled was forceful and domineering, lacking the gentleness of radiant saint masters. As a result, they could only heal themselves and not others. At the same time, the radiant saint force they possessed a very powerful offensive ability. It was an extreme form of energy that would bring them great benefits when used on themselves, but if used on others, it would become very aggressive. As a result, their healing abilities were far inferior to radiant saint masters of the same level. As Jianqin sensed the gentle radiant saint force in the cave, he also sensed another type of forceful radiant saint force. As a result, Jianqin felt a piercing pain when the forceful light shone on him. Chapter 345. Jianqin was a radiant saint master, not a radiant warrior. Radiant saint masters mainly cultivated their mental force. They used their mental force to communicate with the radiant saint force in the world and control the radiant saint force to heal others. However, radiant warriors cultivated the same way as regular cultivators, relying on absorbing energy to increase their strength. Mental force was secondary because their healing ability increased with the increase of saint force in their body. It had nothing to do with mental force. As a result, the light origin energy was not of much help to Jianqin because he was not a cultivator of radiant saint force. Although radiant saint master and radiant warrior only had a difference of 2 words, they were 2 completely different paths of cultivation. One focused on mental force, while the other focused on saint force in the body. Jianqin left the cave very quickly. Although he knew that the light origin energy was inside, it was only for him to comprehend. He could not benefit from staying inside at all. Moreover, he had to endure the piercing pain all over his body. Afterwards, Jianqin visited the other caves. Other than increasing his knowledge, he did not do anything else. He did not have any of these energies in his body, so he was not fated to have any of them. Very soon, Jianqin arrived at the 3rd region. The 3rd region was a huge mountain wall with 8 extremely large caves. However, these caves were very high from the ground. The lowest one was over 30 meters high, while the highest one was over 100 meters high, almost reaching the top of the cave. The entire mountain wall was as smooth as a mirror. There were no stairs. Without a certain level of strength, it was impossible to climb up. There were some words carved on the outside of these caves. On the lowest cave was written, "Left by the Holy Emperor, second layer Martial Emperor Yunyang." On the top of the 3 highest caves were written, "Left by the Holy Emperor, ninth layer Qinyu." Left by the Holy Emperor, ninth layer Shui Wuya. Left by the Holy Emperor, ninth layer Long Si Xia Sun. Jianqin slowly glanced over the caves. It was easy to imagine the shock he felt. The 8 huge caves had actually all been left behind by the Holy Emperor, and the 3 highest caves had actually been left behind by a supreme expert like the Holy Emperor. Could it be that the saint emperors who left behind these caves were all from Mercenary City? Jianqin thought. Only at that moment did he truly witness the tip of the iceberg of Mercenary City's strength. Mercenary City was truly worthy of being a peak organization that had stood on the Tianyuan continent for countless years. Not only did they possess over a dozen saint rulers, but they also possessed a supreme expert like the Holy Emperor. A colossal organization like them was like an undefeatable beast on the Tianyuan continent. No one could kill them. At this moment, Jianqin could not help but think of the hall master he had seen in the space where he had collected the tokens. At the same time, he was the Uncle Tian that Mingdong had mentioned. If someone like him was a saint ruler 5,000 years ago, just what level of strength had he reached 5,000 years later? Was he the Holy Emperor, or was he the Holy Emperor? Since he was able to meet him in the competition space created by Mercenary City, did that mean that he was also a member of Mercenary City? Jianqin sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed his surging emotions. Afterward, he leapt into the lowest cave. The tunnel in the cave was very long and twisted. Jianqin walked for around 300 meters before finally reaching the end. It was an extremely spacious cave, around 50 meters in both width and length. There was no light in the cave, so the cave that should have been extremely gloomy was extraordinarily bright. It was the exact same as the sunny world outside. It was impossible to find the source of the light, which added to the sense of mystery. The walls of the cave were engraved with many images of people. Every single image was extremely lifelike. The people inside performed various actions as if they were real people. 3 people stood in the center of the cave in a daze as they stared at the images blankly. They stood there like pieces of wood, unable to move at all. One of them was the 13th elder that Jianqin recognized. Are the images engraved on the walls the legendary saint tier battle skills? Jianqin muttered to himself. He then walked over to the 3 of them and stood in the middle of the cave like the 3 of them. He stared at the pictures on the wall for a long time, but he couldn't understand anything. He couldn't make out anything at all. Jianqin, why have you come here? Didn't the 8th elder tell you to cultivate in the first region? Suddenly, the 13th elder's voice rang out in Jianqin's ears. The 13th elder's voice was filled with surprise. 13th elder, I'm just looking around. I heard the 8th elder say that the 3rd region is filled with saint tier battle skills. Are the images on the walls the saint tier battle skills? Jianqin whispered. He was afraid of disturbing the other 2, so he spoke very softly. That's right. These are indeed saint tier battle skills. Since you've come here, you must have seen the 8 caves outside. This is one of the treasures of our Mercenary City. There are a total of 8 saint tier battle skills, which were left behind by the 8 founding elders of our Mercenary City. Every single one of them had reached the level of the Holy Emperor, and these saint tier battle skills were created by them. The 13th elder replied secretly. 13th elder, you can comprehend saint tier battle skills from just a few images? You don't even have a method to cultivate them. How are you supposed to learn them? Jianqin asked in doubt. Saint tier battle skills are different from heaven tier battle skills. There's no method to cultivate them at all. You have to comprehend every single move on your own. Saint tier battle skills completely borrow the power of the world, so you need to reach Saint Ruler if you want to comprehend saint tier battle skills. This is because only by reaching Saint Ruler can you begin to comprehend the mysteries of the world and control some of the power of the world. Jianqin, Saint tier battle skills are not something you can comprehend. You're just wasting your time here. You should return to the first region to cultivate. You're the king of mercenaries this time. Once you reach Saint Ruler, you can come to the sacred land to comprehend for 5 years every 50 years. The 13th Elder replied secretly. Thank you for your kindness, 13th Elder. I want to see more of these Saint tier battle skills. Although I can't learn them, it's not bad to broaden my horizons. Jianqin gently smiled. Up to you. However, you only have half a year. I hope you cherish it. The 13th Elder said no more after that. Jianqin remained calm as he stared at the first image carefully. After learning that he had to comprehend the Saint tier battle skills completely, Jianqin's attitude towards the images immediately changed. He no longer observed them with a normal gaze. Instead, he used his heart to feel every single movement of the people in the images. He did not even overlook their presence. Seeing every single movement of the people in the images, Jianqin's mind flashed with inspiration from time to time. He seemed to understand something, but he was unable to grasp it. In the blink of an eye, he became very confused again. He felt like there was something more to every single movement, but he was unable to understand what it was. As a result, Jianqin felt very conflicted. As he looked at the images, Jianqin suddenly felt his mind become very chaotic. He gradually felt his head swell as if it had become a balloon that was constantly inflating. It was about to explode from the powerful qi inside, which gave him a splitting headache. Jianqin knew that it was because of the Saint tier battle skills. He immediately closed his eyes and sat down on the ground, making his mind blank. He did not think or do anything, maintaining a state of deep sleep. After an unknown amount of time, Jianqin finally returned to normal. He slowly opened his eyes and stared at the image again. Now, Jianqin could see it more clearly than the first time. Gradually, he felt like the people in the images were like the heavens, representing a part of the world. Every single movement of his seemed to be one with the world. Every single movement of his seemed to contain the profound mysteries of the world. Although it seemed like an ordinary attack, it contained a profound mystery. It was something that Jianqin could not understand. When Jianqin tried his best to understand it, he felt like the attack was just that simple, where he could casually use it. At other times, he would feel like the attack contained many things. It was a simple attack, yet it contained countless variations. At other times, he would feel like the attack was completely natural, having fused with the world, representing the judgment of the world. At other times, he would feel like the attack possessed enough power to shock the world, enough to destroy the world. It was just a simple drawing. Yet Jianqin had managed to glean so much information. If the Saint Rulers knew about this, they would probably all widen their eyes in disbelief. It was impossible for an Earth Saint Master to comprehend so much from a Saint tier battle skill. It was possible to imagine that once he grasped the mysteries of the world, comprehending Saint tier battle skills would be an extremely easy matter. It might even be possible for him to create his own Saint tier battle skills. Very soon, Jianqin's mind became a mess as various information entered Jianqin's head. In the end, his head began to swell, and in the end, he felt like his head was about to split open. Jianqin immediately copied what he did last time. He closed his eyes and did his best to calm himself down. Afterwards, Jianqin repeated the same steps over a dozen times. He looked at the first image, but the information he obtained was that the simple image seemed to contain many mysteries. No matter how he looked at it, he could not take another step forward. He could only stop there. If he continued, he would feel like his head was about to split open. His thoughts would become muddled, and his reactions would become sluggish. Looks like it's impossible to comprehend a Saint tier battle skill without grasping the mysteries of the world. I keep feeling like there are many things that should exist in these moves, but I just can't understand them. Are these the mysteries of the world? Jianqin secretly sighed inside. The legendary Saint Tier battle skill was right before him. Chapter 346. Jianqin left the cave and went to the other 7 caves to take a look. There was a Saint Tier battle skill recorded in each cave, but without any exception, all of the Saint Tier battle skills were engraved with images of people. They had to be comprehended on their own. Saint Tier battle skills were different from Heaven Tier battle skills. Heaven Tier battle skills were almost always described in words. As long as one spent some time mastering them, they would be able to use them. However, Saint Tier battle skills were completely different. They had to rely on one's own comprehension ability. If one couldn't grasp the essentials, they wouldn't be able to learn it even if they had a Saint Tier battle skill. Saint Tier battle skills were complicated and profound. Some of the Saint Tier battle skills had over 100 images, recording every move of the Saint Tier battle skill, as well as the mysteries contained within each move. There were also some Saint Tier battle skills that only consisted of 3 drawings, forming a single attack. However, this attack contained the power to destroy the world. When you used your heart to sense and comprehend it, the characters in the drawings would seem to come alive. They possessed an aura that could make the world tremble. If you didn't have a certain foundation of strength, just this aura alone wouldn't be something that people could withstand. Jianqin was pressured by this presence to the point where he vomited blood on the spot. Just the charm of a single image was enough to heavily injure Jianqin. After this, Jianqin gained an even deeper understanding of the power of Saint Tier battle skills. He knew that he was still unable to come into contact with something of that level with his current cultivation. Saint Tier battle skills were still too far away for him right now. If he did not become a Saint Ruler and comprehend the mysteries of the world, he probably would not be able to grasp the slightest bit of Saint Tier battle skills, even if he spent all his time here. After leaving the 3rd region, Jianqin went to the 4th region. The 4th region was an extremely large study. There were tables and chairs in there, as well as bookshelves in the surroundings. The bookshelves were filled with books. All of the books were made from the furs of high-level magical beasts. Pure pulses of energy pulsed from them, preventing the books from being corroded by time. These books contained the cultivation experiences of the predecessors and some of the realms they had comprehended. Although they weren't of much help to Jianqin now, he could memorize the things inside and increase his knowledge and understanding of the future realms. In the blink of an eye, Jianqin had already stayed in the 4th region for 3 months. During the 3 months in the Holy Land's 4th area, Jianqin read a group of books and observed the cultivation experience left behind by his predecessors, as well as the comprehension of various realms. Although it was not of much help to him now, it would be of great help to him when he reached that level in the future. During these days in the 4th region, Jianqin was completely laying the foundation for his future. Because he had summarized a lot of experience from these books, he had a clear understanding of the future realm. Cultivation below the Heaven Saint Master level was completely about absorbing the energy of the world and constantly strengthening one's saint weapon, thus increasing one's strength. There was a threshold of life and death between Great Saint Master and Earth Saint Master. Once one crossed the threshold and became a dragon, if one failed, the lightest outcome would be becoming a cripple who could not cultivate. Cultivation after the Earth Saint Master level was extremely simple. There were basically no obstacles. As long as one had time, they could easily reach the 6th cycle of Earth Saint Master level. If one wanted to break through to the Heaven Saint Master level, they would need to connect with the energy of the world and begin to use it. Only then would they be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master level. The reason why Heaven Saint Masters could fly was not because their saint force was powerful enough to allow them to float. Instead, it was because they could control the energy of the world, allowing it to support their flight. Moreover, the consumption of energy was extremely low. As a result, to reach the Heaven Saint Master level, one needed to begin to control the energy of the world. The final hurdle was the threshold of Saint Ruler. Although breaking through to Saint Ruler would not result in a near-death experience like becoming an Earth Saint Master, it was thousands of times more difficult than breaking through to the Earth Saint Master level. This was because breaking through to Saint Ruler required one to comprehend the mysteries of the world. The mysteries of the world were complex and extremely difficult to comprehend. This was why there were so few Saint Rulers on the Tianyuan continent. This level of comprehension was not something that the current Jianqin could come into contact with. After leaving the fourth region, Jianqin still had a month left in the sacred ground. He planned on cultivating in the first region during this last month. The flow of time in the first region was 10 times that of the outside world. In other words, Jianqin could cultivate in the first region for another 10 months. Arriving in the first region, the heavenly enchantress remained seated where she had been before. Jianqin did not disturb her and continued to sit 10 meters away from her. He then took out 2 Class 5 monster cores and began to cultivate. Although the energy there was extremely dense, it was not as pure as Class 5 monster cores. He was currently at the peak of the 3rd cycle, only a step away from the 4th cycle. He wanted to reach the 4th cycle as soon as possible. The energy in the sacred ground is different from the outside world. The energy here contains some fragments of the mysteries of the world. Although it's very little, it should be quite helpful to you. As soon as Jianqin took out the Class 5 monster cores, the heavenly enchantress' melodious voice rang out in his head. Jianqin was immediately stunned when he heard that. He had never thought that the energy in the sacred ground would be so profound. He then clasped his hands at the heavenly enchantress and thanked her. He immediately followed her orders and put the Class 5 monster cores away. He began to absorb the energy in the sacred ground. Immediately, the energy in the first region began to wildly gather toward Jianqin. Jianqin did not reject any of it, absorbing it all into his body like a whale. His rate of absorption was actually no slower than the heavenly enchantress. With the help of the sword spirits, Jianqin was able to absorb the energy of the world and the energy within the monster cores much faster than other people of the same level of strength. Ever since the Azulite sword spirits had awakened in the Huang family village, they no longer tried to steal energy from Jianqin without his permission like they did in the past. As such, all of the energy was now being absorbed by Jianqin alone. The heavenly enchantress seemed to be startled by Jianqin's rate of absorption as well. She immediately opened her eyes and glanced at Jianqin in surprise. Afterward, she closed her eyes again. A while later, a sliver of joy appeared on Jianqin's face as he began to cultivate. Sure enough, he discovered that the energy within the Saint Force really did seem to be different from the energy in the outside world. There were few things that he did not understand within it, just like the things within the mercenary's heart. These things seemed to flash through his head like a flash of light that he could not grasp no matter how hard he tried. Jianqin was familiar with these things. They were the mysteries of the world that he could not comprehend at his current level. Jianqin was overjoyed by this discovery. He immediately devoted the rest of his time to cultivation, hoping that he could absorb some more of the mysteries of the world. He originally planned on using some time to comprehend the illusory flash, but he gave up on it without any hesitation because of this surprising discovery. Note: I should add that the 2 months that Jianqin spent refining the mercenary's heart in the first region was in the outside world and not in the first region. As a result, Jianqin spent over a year refining the mercenary's heart in the first region. Very soon, Jianqin had cultivated in the first region for 10 months. Now that he had reached the 4th cycle of Earth Saint Master, the number of mysteries of the world in Jianqin's head had increased by quite a lot after 10 months of crazy cultivation. When he calmed down and entered a state of emptiness, the mysteries of the world would flash through his head as a flash of light. Although Jianqin could not grasp it, there would always be some strange ideas that would appear in his head from time to time. These ideas were intermittent, sometimes clear, and sometimes blurry. They were very difficult to understand, but without exception, they all corresponded to the mysteries of the world. With the help of the mysteries of the world, Jianqin had only built a solid foundation for his future comprehension of the mysteries of the world. With his current level of cultivation, he would not be able to comprehend the mysteries within even if he absorbed enough mysteries of the world. Today, half a year was up. The eighth elder walked in from outside and said to Jianqin through a communication technique, "Jianqin, your half a year is up. Come with me, I'll take you out." Jianqin secretly sighed. Only now did he truly understand the benefits of a sacred ground. During the time he had spent cultivating in the first region, he had actually obtained many mysteries of the world despite not being able to come in contact with them. After learning of the benefits, Jianqin was actually reluctant to leave. If only I could stay here forever. Jianqin could not help but think, but he also knew that it was impossible. In the end, he could only follow behind the eighth elder helplessly and reluctantly leave the first region. The eighth elder could not help but smile when he saw how reluctant Jianqin was. He said, "Jianqin, are you reluctant to leave? This place is indeed a treasure trove. Even saint rulers can't resist the temptation here, but you don't need to worry. You're the champion of this year's tournament, the Mercenary King. Once you break through to saint ruler in the future, you'll have the opportunity to enter here to cultivate every time the sacred ground opens. The sacred ground opens once every 50 years, and you can stay there for 5 years every time it opens. Since I can stay here for 5 years, why am I only allowed to stay for half a year?" Jianqin asked, unwilling to give up. The eighth elder chuckled. "Only saint rulers have the right to stay here for 5 years, while those who obtained first place in the tournament can only stay for half a year. These are the rules of Mercenary City." Jianqin was immediately at a loss for words. The sacred ground was their territory after all. If they wanted to set their own rules, no one had the right to interfere. Chapter 347. After passing through the space gate of the sacred grounds, Jianqin discovered that he had appeared in a garden. 50 meters in front of him, there was an extremely conspicuous pavilion. It seemed to have been baptized by wind and frost, giving off a sense of vicissitudes. Jianqin was not unfamiliar with this place. He had come here not long ago, and it was here that he had met the 8th and 13th elders who were playing chess in the pavilion. A figure quickly flew over from afar, landing in front of Jianqin very quickly. It was a middle-aged man with a scholarly appearance. He gave off a scholarly aura as if he was a well-read scholar. The middle-aged man wore white robes and had a stately appearance. His calm eyes flickered with light from time to time. Jianqin could tell that the man was a heaven saint master, at the very least from the way he flew over. He did not dare to be negligent and was about to clasp his hands in greeting when the man unexpectedly spoke first. "You should be Jianqin." Jianqin forcefully swallowed the greetings that were about to come out of his throat. He nodded. "Correct, I am Jianqin. The elders have ordered me to take you out." "Come with me," the middle-aged man said indifferently. With a wave of his hand, Jianqin felt an irresistible energy envelop him. Afterward, his body was lifted off the ground as he was taken into the air by the middle-aged man. Is this the energy of the world that a heaven saint master can control? This was not the first time Jianqin had experienced something like this, so he did not make a fuss. Instead, he did his best to sense the energy that enveloped him. The middle-aged man flew at a very low altitude, only 10 meters above the ground. He flew over a sea of flowers at a very fast speed. Before long, the middle-aged man brought Jianqin to a space gate. The middle-aged man descended and said to Jianqin, "You can go through here." Afterward, Jianqin returned the way he had come. Passing through the space gate, Jianqin appeared in the huge palace of Mercenary City. He was then brought into a hall where he saw a ruddy old man. The old man passed a badge to Jianqin and said, "This is the badge of honor that belongs to the Mercenary King. It's made from many precious materials and we've engraved a formation inside. You can activate it with Saint Force. After activating it, it can quickly gather the energy of the world in a radius of several dozen kilometers, greatly increasing your cultivation speed. Jianshan's heart skipped a beat. He immediately thought that if he gave the badge to the Flame Mercenaries or the Changyang Prefecture, it would probably be of great help. Jianshan accepted the badge and carefully stored it away before leaving the hall. He finally made his way out of the hall under the guidance of a member of Mercenary City, arriving on a street. Jianshan stretched his body comfortably as he looked at the bright sunlight in the sky. He had stayed in the sacred ground for quite some time now and had not seen sunlight for a very long time. Now that he was bathed in sunlight, he felt a comfortable feeling that originated from his soul. It had already been half a year since the tournament, so the bustling mercenary city had returned to how it was in the past. Although it had become much more desolate compared to half a year ago, there were still many mercenaries and carriages with large carts of goods that flowed through the streets. As the sacred ground of the mercenaries on the Tianyuan continent, Mercenary City was bustling all year round. Mercenaries flowed through the streets endlessly. Now that winter was over, it was summer, so the scorching sun in the sky seemed extremely scorching. The scorching sunlight baked the ground, making it seem like a furnace. Jianshan's body, which was covered in the dark, damp presence of the sacred ground, dried up very quickly under the scorching sunlight. Jianshan arrived at the square in the center of Mercenary City. The huge square had already become a main road that extended in all directions. Countless mercenaries on magical beast mounts passed through it. It was no longer as bustling as it had been half a year ago. The statue of the founder of Mercenary City, Tianyan, still stood in the square like a pillar that held up the sky. It was filled with charm, as if it was a real person. Jianshan already possessed some fragments of the mysteries of the world in his head. What he saw now was completely different from what he had seen half a year ago. In his eyes, Tianyun's statue seemed to be filled with endless mysteries. Although it stood there with its arms crossed in an ordinary manner, it gave him a strange feeling, as if it was not a statue but a world of its own. At first glance, the statue seemed to have fused with the world, as if it was the heavens and the heavens were the statue. Jianshan stared at Tianyun's statue for quite a while before gradually returning to his senses. He then bowed to Tianyun's statue politely before leaving. As his understanding of Mercenary City deepened, Jianshan's admiration for Tianyan constantly deepened. Jianshan wandered through the streets aimlessly before entering a restaurant in the end. He casually ordered a few dishes and began to eat. It had been a very long time since he had eaten such delicacies after staying in the sacred grounds for so long. It was the afternoon right now, so it was already past lunchtime. As a result, the restaurant seemed extremely quiet. Jianshan was the only guest. At this moment, 3 middle-aged men walked in from outside. They directly walked to a table and sat down. "Waiter, bring some good wine and meat." Jianshan glanced at the 3 of them indifferently before silently finishing off the food on the table. "Blackie, after we complete this mercenary mission, our mercenary group will be able to successfully advance to a B rank mercenary group, right?" One of the middle-aged men said to a large, dark-skinned man beside him. The dark-skinned man nodded and said, "Yes, our mercenary group was already B rank 3 years ago. We've completed so many mercenary missions in the past 3 years, so we should have accumulated enough honor. After we complete this mission, our mercenary group will indeed advance to B rank." The 3 middle-aged men were all experienced mercenaries. They ate while discussing mercenary matters. Their gazes would occasionally drift towards Jianshan, who was eating with a lowered head. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Jianshan had eaten his fill. He patted his stomach in satisfaction and said, "Waiter, do you have a good room here? Prepare one for me." As he spoke, Jianshan directly placed a purple coin on the table. "All right, sir, I'll arrange a room for you right away. Please wait a moment." The waiter smiled as he accepted Jianshin's purple coin and began to busy himself. Jianshin looked at the three middle-aged men with a meaningful smile on his face. He then slowly walked over and said, "How should I address the three of you?" Jianshin's sudden arrival stunned the three middle-aged men, but they recovered quickly. One of them immediately stood up and cupped his hands with a face full of smiles. "I'm Jianhua, and these two are my close brothers. They are Blackie and Baol. I see that you have an extraordinary bearing and can tell that you're not an ordinary person. How should I address you, little brother?" "I'm Jianshin," Jianshin said with a face full of smiles. Hearing this, the three middle-aged men were shocked. They stared at Jianshin in disbelief. The middle-aged man named Jianhua immediately said with a face full of surprise, "Could it be that little brother is that Jianshin who won first place in the mercenary tournament half a year ago?" "That's me." The smile on Jianshin's face became strange. "Ah, so little brother is Jianshin. I'm sorry for not recognizing you. Sorry for not recognizing you. Little brother's reputation is like thunder to my ears. I didn't expect to be fortunate enough to meet you today. It's really a blessing for the three of us." Jianhua's attitude immediately became respectful. The other two people also cupped their hands and greeted Jianshin with a face full of surprise. They were very polite. Looking at the three of them, Jianshin finally let out a cold smile and said, "The three of you, stop acting with me. Tell me why you're here." Hearing this, the three of them stared at Jianshin with a face full of confusion. Jianhua was even more confused and asked in confusion, "Little brother Jianshin, what are you talking about?" Jianshin coldly snorted, "The three of you have been following me for several days. Do you really think I don't know? Tell me why you're here. I don't like to waste time." Jianhua's face was full of shock, but then he smiled and said, "Little brother, you must be joking. We didn't follow you. Maybe it's just a coincidence that we're walking the same road. If I'm not wrong, the three of you should be from the Jetta family or the Sher family." Jianshin's eyes became sharp like a sword as he stared at the three of them. The three of them still had a face full of confusion. Jianhua's face was full of innocence as he bitterly smiled and said, "Little brother Jianshin, we don't understand what you're saying. You've misunderstood us." Looking at the three of them, who didn't seem to be pretending, Jianshin knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. He didn't want to waste any more time and directly went up to the second floor. After Jianshin disappeared, the three of them's faces suddenly became gloomy. "I didn't expect him to be so alert. We've been following him for so long, but he still noticed us," Jianhua whispered. "Then what do we do now?" Hey Z whispered. "What else can we do? Of course we have to inform the elders." After that, the three of them threw down a purple coin and quickly left. In a luxurious restaurant, an old man was angrily staring at the three middle-aged men kneeling in front of him. He pointed at their heads and scolded, "Trash, trash, a bunch of trash! I told you to follow a single person, and you were discovered. What the hell are you doing? So useless." The three middle-aged men were Jinhua and Heizi. At this moment, the three of them were trembling in fear as they knelt there, not daring to even breathe. "Elder, you can't blame us for this. We were very careful when we were following the target. It's just that the target was too vigilant. That's why we were discovered." Jianhua's tone was somewhat frightened as he quibbled, absolving the three of their crimes. At this moment, the door opened and another old man walked in. He looked at the three middle-aged men kneeling on the ground and frowned slightly. He asked, "Fourth brother, what happened?" Chapter 348. The old man who had just entered became rather stern when he heard the fourth brother's words. He said in a low voice, "This is bad. Although I've never seen Jianshin before, he must be a smart and cautious person if he can discover that we're following him. Since he knows that we're watching him, he won't leave Mercenary City unless he has absolute confidence in dealing with us." Exactly. We could have attacked Jianshin after he left Mercenary City and taken back what belongs to us. But those 3 pieces of trash actually ruined our plans at such a crucial moment. Now that Jianshin knows that we're secretly watching him, he definitely won't leave Mercenary City, the old man called fourth brother said emotionally. Sigh, if we knew that Jianshin was so vigilant, we would have followed him ourselves. That way, none of this would have happened. It's troublesome now. If Jianshin continues to stay in Mercenary City, we won't be able to do anything to him. The old man sighed regretfully. Third elder, you're smart. Tell us what we should do now. The fourth brother calmed down very quickly and looked at the old man for help. The third elder frowned and thought before murmuring. Jianshin managed to obtain first place in the mercenary tournament at such a young age. Perhaps he's even more complicated than we thought. He must already know that we're following him, so there's no point in continuing to hide. Third brother, let's go meet this young man and see if we can get him to hand over the seal of the treasure mountain through other methods. We can only set aside the third young master's revenge for now. The most important thing right now is to retrieve the clan's treasure. The fourth brother nodded. Looks like that's the only thing we can do. Sigh, it's all because the patriarch was too greedy. He actually made the third young master use the special environment of the participant space to steal the Sun Moon Bow from the Huang family. In the end, not only did he not obtain the Sun Moon Bow, he even lost our clan's seal of the treasure mountain. Moreover, the third young master was killed in there as well. Forget it, fourth brother. It's already happened, so there's no point in talking about it. Let's go meet this Jianshin right now. Hopefully, we can retrieve the ruler armament. Also, eat this, the third elder said before taking out a red pill and handing it to the fourth brother. The fourth brother trusted the third elder very much. Without even asking what it was, he swallowed the red pill in a single gulp. Afterwards, the 2 old men arrived at the restaurant where Jianshin resided according to the location Jianshin had given them and found Jianshin. At this moment, Jianshin was sitting cross-legged on the bed, comprehending the illusory flash. When he saw the 2 old men, he didn't get off the bed. He just sat there and calmly stared at them. The third elder stared at Jianshin with sparkling eyes and praised him. No wonder you were able to obtain first place in the mercenary tournament. You are indeed a man of striking appearance. Jianshin, we are from the Shi family. Our third young master, Shi Xiangran, may have offended you in some way, so we have come here to apologize to you. I hope you will not take this matter to heart. Jianshin also smiled and replied, Senior is too polite. It's just a small matter. I, Jianshin, have long since forgotten about it. As long as others don't find trouble with me, I won't randomly make enemies. Hearing this, the fourth brother rolled his eyes and cursed in his heart. You killed the third young master of the Shi family and even stole the Shi family's heirloom, the seal of Treasure Mountain. It would be strange if the Shi family didn't find trouble with you. The third elder chuckled and said, Hee, little brother Jianshin is truly magnanimous. I wonder if little brother is willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain to our Shi family, and we can bury the hatchet. After all, the seal of Treasure Mountain cannot be used without the blood of our Shi family and a special, secret technique. It is useless for you to keep it on you, and it will instead make our Shi family very dissatisfied with you. This will greatly affect your relationship with our Shi family. Do you think you can consider it? Think about it. Of course, if you are willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain to our Shi family will not treat you unfairly. We will definitely give you a considerable reward. The third elder's words were reasonable and not threatening at all. It was as if they were talking on equal terms. His tone was calm, without the slightest trace of anger or arrogance. Unfortunately, Jianshin did not buy it. With a face full of disappointment, he sighed and said, I'm afraid I will have to disappoint the elders. I have already given the seal of Treasure Mountain to someone else. It is no longer on me. Jianshin's words made the 2 elders' expressions change drastically. The third elder could no longer maintain his calm and said in shock, What? You have already given the seal of Treasure Mountain to someone else. It is no longer on you. Is this true? Before I entered the Holy Land, I had already given the seal of Treasure Mountain to Qinji. It is no longer on me, Jianqin said with certainty. You bastard, you actually gave away something as precious as the seal of Treasure Mountain to someone else. Why, you bastard, do you want to die? That is the treasure of our Sher family. How can you give it to someone else? The rather irascible fourth brother could no longer hold himself back. He pointed at Jianqin's nose and cursed in exasperation. If it were not for the fact that he did not dare to do anything in Mercenary City, he probably would have slapped Jianqin already. The third elder's face became rather sunken as well. He stared at Jianqin closely as the light in his eyes flickered. After a moment of thought, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood before quickly drawing in the air with his finger. Very soon, a complicated, blood-red diagram appeared in the air. The third elder bellowed out as he suddenly pointed at the center of the diagram. He called out, "Seal of Treasure Mountain, return!" With that, Jianqin's face changed. This was because he suddenly discovered that the seal of Treasure Mountain in his space ring had begun to tremble, as if it was about to break free from the space ring's restraints and fly away. Jianqin was surprised. He never thought that the old man would actually have the ability to summon the seal of Treasure Mountain. Fortunately, the summoning force was not very powerful, or his space ring probably would not have been able to trap the seal of Treasure Mountain. Jianqin immediately sealed the space ring tightly to prevent the seal of Treasure Mountain from escaping. The blood-red diagram in the air faded very quickly before disappearing in the end. The third elder's ruddy face paled at that moment. It seemed like using the secret technique had taken a huge toll on him. Jianqin, you can't lie to us. The seal of the Treasure Mountain is on you. You should return it to us. That way, we'll have something to answer to when we return. The third elder's voice had become much weaker, but he still spoke sincerely. Jianqin had nothing to hide now that things had developed to this point. He said firmly, "Please return." Are you really not willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain? It will only cause more trouble for you if you keep it with you. The third elder did not give up as he tried to convince Jianqin. That's none of your business. Jianqin had never thought of returning the seal of Treasure Mountain. He would rather give it to someone else than return it to the Sher family. This was because he knew that even if the Sher family took it back, they would not let him go. He had experienced similar situations several times in his previous life. The third elder sighed and took out a pouch. He said, "Jianqin, do you want to know what this is?" Without waiting for Jianqin's reply, the third elder continued, "I spent a lot of money to buy this from an old friend who is good at using poisons. It contains a poison called the 100 Poison Powder. This poison is very strong and is made from the fusion of several hundred different kinds of poisons. It is colorless and odorless and can spread through the air. Just inhaling a little of it will cause a person to be poisoned. Even Heaven's Saint Masters will not be able to avoid it. Apart from a special antidote, there is no other antidote." Hearing this, the fourth elder's eyes lit up. He said in surprise, "Third elder, so you had such a great trick. I admire you. No wonder you had me eat that pill before we came. That must be the antidote." The third elder nodded with a smile and did not say anything. He looked at Jianqin with confidence. He believed that he already had Jianqin's life in his hands. Jianqin looked at the third elder with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "Third elder, don't tell me that I am already poisoned." "That's right." The third elder nodded. He said, "Jianqin, from the moment I entered this room, I took out the 5 poison powder. After such a long time, the poison has already spread to every corner of the room. You have already inhaled quite a lot of poison, but you did not notice it." Hearing the third elder's words, Jianqin suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter was very carefree, causing the third elder and the fourth elder to be confused. Third elder, I forgot to tell you. I have a sacred item that repels poison on me. The poison in your hand is useless against me. Gentian laughed as he looked at the two old men playfully. The third elder's confidence immediately took a heavy blow. His face immediately darkened, becoming as ugly as it could be. He originally thought that he had Gentian in the bag this time, but he never thought that he would have a plan while Gentian would have a way out. He was actually unable to do anything to Gentian. Fourth elder, let's go. The third elder swung his sleeve and collected all the poison in the room. He turned around and left. The fourth elder glanced at Gentian coldly and said with a heavy voice, "Kid, just wait until you stay in Mercenary City forever." With that, the fourth elder swung his sleeve and left. That night, Gentian discovered that many uninvited guests had come to his inn. At the same time, countless pairs of eyes hidden in the darkness began to stare at him day and night. Chapter 349. As for the Jitta family and the Sure family surveillance, Gentian did not take it to heart. He had already expected things to develop to this point. The next day, Gentian checked out of his room and began to wander around the streets of Mercenary City. He walked left and right without a goal in mind. Behind him, there were a dozen or so people in different attire following him from a distance. Now that they were not afraid of being discovered by Gentian, they no longer bothered to hide their tracks. Gentian led them around for an entire day and only found a random inn to stay at night. The next morning, Gentian checked out of his room and left the inn early. As soon as he left, the people behind him immediately followed and stayed about 30 meters behind Gentian. Gentian did not even look at the people behind him and began to wander around the streets of Mercenary City. He looked left and right as he walked, as if he was admiring the scenery. Just as Gentian passed by a gambling den, his lips suddenly curled into a mocking smile. He then quickly entered the gambling den, and the people behind him hurriedly followed behind him. There were many people in the gambling den, and it was very lively. There was a lot of noise everywhere. There were excited shouts from those who won money, and disappointed sighs from those who lost money. It was very noisy. Gentian quickly moved through the crowd, looking for places with a lot of people. Then, using the crowd as a cover, he quickly arrived at another entrance of the gambling den. His figure flashed and left the gambling den, leaving behind a dozen or so people who were anxiously looking for traces of him. After leaving the gambling den, Gentian immediately changed to another street and quickly moved through it. After passing through a few streets, he casually found an inn and stayed there, using the inn to hide his tracks. However, that night, Gentian suddenly discovered that the people who were following him had reappeared in the surroundings. What a bunch of annoying flies! Gentian cursed under his breath, but there was nothing he could do about it. With these people following him, he wouldn't dare leave Mercenary City. If the Jitta family and Sure family found out that he had left Mercenary City, they would definitely try to kill him. The next morning, Gentian checked out of his room and headed straight for the palace-like buildings near the plaza of Mercenary City. This was a department of Mercenary City's headquarters in the city. It was convenient for them to communicate with the outside world. Since Gentian was the king of mercenaries, his special identity allowed him to enter unimpeded. However, the person who received him was a middle-aged man. "Senior, I have an important matter to discuss with the elder. I wonder if you can make an exception for me?" Gentian asked the middle-aged man politely. The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "No, it's not that easy to see the elder, now that your ceremony is over. Unless the elder takes the initiative to summon you, you won't be able to see the elder." Hearing this, Gentian was disappointed and continued to ask, "Then can I leave this place through the space gate?" The space gates of Mercenary City are all connected to the interior of the city. Only the insiders can use them when necessary. As for the space gate that leads to the outside, it requires the permission of the elder. Otherwise, even the insiders are forbidden from using it. The middle-aged man said indifferently. Gentian left with a face full of disappointment. He should have told the eighth elder when he was in the Holy Land and asked for his permission to leave through the space gate of Mercenary City. After leaving Mercenary City, Jianqin began to wander through the streets again. However, he was thinking of a way to escape. Perhaps it was because Jianqin had used the environment of the casino to shake off the people following him. So in order to avoid a repeat of last time, these people had closed the distance between them and Jianqin. They had gone from 20 meters the day before to 5 meters now, brazenly following him. Jianqin clenched his teeth at the sight of their arrogance. If it were not for the fact that fighting was forbidden in Mercenary City, he would have given these people a vicious beating long ago. How could he allow them to be so arrogant? Jianqin knew that it would be very difficult for him to shake them off at such a close distance. Even if he used the illusory flash, he would not be able to solve the problem because the people following him all possessed wind-attributed Saint Force. Every single one of them was an Earth Saint Master, and 2 of them even possessed Saint Force more powerful than Jianqin. That night, Jianqin casually checked into an inn. After eating dinner, he returned to his room to rest. The people following Jianqin immediately dispersed. A few of them checked into the inn next to Jianqin's room, while a few others closely monitored the entire inn to prevent Jianqin from escaping through other means in the middle of the night. The next day, he left his room early in the morning. After eating breakfast on the first floor of the inn, he did not leave like he had done 2 days ago. Instead, he returned to his room and locked himself in to cultivate. This continued for a few days. Other than when he left his room during meal times, Jianqin spent the rest of his time comprehending the illusory flash. In the beginning, the people following him remained vigilant, but after seeing that Jianqin did not plan on leaving the inn after so long, they believed that Jianqin planned on staying here for a long time. All of them relaxed quite a bit, or at least they were not as tense as before. Even though this was the case, their surveillance of Jianqin did not weaken at all. Regardless of day or night, there were people watching him. The entire inn seemed to be enveloped by a large, invisible net. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. During these 10 days, Jianqin had been comprehending the illusory flash. Perhaps it was because his mind contained a few fragments of the world's mysteries, but his comprehension of the illusory flash was much faster than before. He had already crossed the threshold, and his speed was 2 times faster than when he used it during the competition. Now, Jianqin believed that even 6th cycle Earth Saint Masters with the wind attribute would not be able to match his speed. Perhaps his speed was comparable to a Heaven Saint Master's. Of course, this was only Jianqin's conservative estimate. He had already crossed the threshold of the illusory flash, but even he did not know how fast his speed was. After all, he had never had the chance to try it out before. In the morning, Jianqin, who was sitting cross-legged on his bed, slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the ceiling above his head and murmured, "Now it's time to leave." After saying that, Jianqin got off his bed. A layer of faint, sword qi appeared between his fingers. With a light leap, he arrived at the ceiling above his head. He then quickly drew a circle on the ceiling with his sword qi. The thick wooden ceiling was immediately cut open like tofu. Afterward, Jianqin gently pushed with his hands, and a half-meter wide round wooden board fell from above, revealing a large hole. Looking at the large hole in his head, Jianqin smiled. He then closed the round wooden board in his hand and turned around to leave the room. Afterwards, Jianqin returned to his room after eating breakfast on the first floor as usual. He closed the door and windows, then immediately took out a few random things from his space ring and smeared them on his face. After a while, Jianqin raised his head. His appearance had completely changed. He had now become a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He had a fierce scar on his face and stubble on his chin. He had a valiant appearance. Looking at himself in the mirror, he nodded in satisfaction. Afterward, a series of pa sounds came from his body. His body had actually grown a bit taller. His body was no longer as delicate as before and had become much thicker. Not long after, Genshin's body had become stocky, which perfectly matched his valiant appearance. Afterwards, Genshin took out a set of black clothes from his space ring and put them on. He then cut off his shoulder-length hair, leaving only an inch long. After doing all this, Genshin seemed to have become a completely different person. He had no connection to his previous appearance at all. At that moment, even Ming Dong and Qin Xiao, who were most familiar with Genshin, were unable to recognize that the stocky man was Genshin. Genshin checked himself again. After confirming that he had not missed anything, he gently removed the wooden board from the ceiling and leapt up. He covered the hole by his feet again before opening the door and swaggering out. Just like that, Genshin successfully avoided everyone's attention and swaggered out of the inn. Not a single person among the dozen, or so people who had followed him, suspected him. They did not even spare him a glance. In the past few days, they had already been numbed by the habits that Genshin had purposely exposed. As a result, they all believed that Genshin would continue cultivating in his room after breakfast. They never thought that Genshin would change his appearance and leave safely under everyone's watchful eyes. Genshin strolled through the streets at a steady pace. He passed through several streets before finally entering a bustling inn and booking a room. He then disguised himself as a frail middle-aged man and left safely. Genshin, who had disguised himself as a middle-aged man, bought a map and some necessities for wilderness survival from a general store. Afterwards, he walked to a remote alley and changed his appearance. Chapter 350. Half a day later, Genshin successfully left Mercenary City with a group of merchants while avoiding everyone's attention. He left without anyone noticing, and no one was able to discover any traces of Genshin. After leaving Mercenary City, Genshin parted ways with the merchant group before heading off in a certain direction alone. Seeing that there was no one around, he immediately dismounted and used the illusory flash to travel as fast as he could. Swish! As soon as he used the illusory flash, Genshin shot off like an arrow, leaving behind a trail of faint afterimages as he shot off with lightning-like speed. Genshin, who was running as fast as he could only hear the deafening sound of the wind. He couldn't hear anything at all, and the scenery on both sides of the road was rapidly receding. He could only see a blurry figure when he looked at something close. He couldn't see it clearly at all. This was the first time Genshin had been able to fly across a wide plain ever since he had obtained the illusory flash. This astonishing speed left Genshin astounded. He was certain that his current speed had surpassed the speed of a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master with the wind attribute. Perhaps only Heaven Saint Masters who could fly in the air could catch up to him. After feeling the unbelievable speed of the illusory flash, Genshin's shock was replaced by intense joy. With such godlike speed, he would have no need to fear even if a Heaven Saint Master caught up to him. Moreover, this was only the basic level of the illusory flash. Genshin could not help but begin to guess just what kind of speed he would be able to reach if he could reach the highest level of the illusory flash. However, the illusory flash was extremely profound. Genshin had only reached the basic level after spending a lot of effort. The further he progressed, the more difficult it became. From the introduction of the illusory flash, Genshin could vaguely tell that the latter part of the illusory flash seemed to be inextricably linked to space. If he wanted to reach that level, he needed to grasp the mysteries of the world. In other words, it was impossible for anyone below Saint Ruler to reach the highest level of the illusory flash. As expected of the supreme scripture of an ancient race, it really is incomparably profound. Genshin secretly sighed. Genshin used the illusory flash to rush south. What he needed to do now was to leave Mercenary City and avoid being caught by the Heaven Saint Masters of the Jetta family and Shur family. On the wide plain, Genshin seemed to have become a missile flying close to the ground. When he used his unbelievable speed to run across the plain, the wind created by him created a long trail of earth behind him. It was a spectacular sight. Fortunately, Genshin was not on the main road. There was not a single person to be seen around him, so to see this spectacular sight, 2 hours later, Jianqin was already a few hundred kilometers away from Mercenary City. If it was in the past, Jianqin would never have dared to imagine such a terrifying scene. However, after 2 hours of running, Jianqin's Saint Force, which only a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master could possess, had been used up by half. Although the Illusory Flash was a movement support battle skill, it was still a high-level Heaven tier battle skill after all. Moreover, it was infinitely close to a Legendary Saint tier battle skill. As a result, using the Illusory Flash consumed an extremely terrifying amount of Saint Force. Even with Jianqin's strength, he could only use it for 4 hours at most. Roar! At this moment, 5 kilometers away, a 3-meter tall black magic leopard discovered Jianqin. It roared towards the sky and immediately turned into a black bolt of lightning as it charged towards Jianqin. Panther-type magical beasts were adept at running, and this magic leopard was a Class 5 magical beast as well, so it was extremely fast when running. Jianqin looked at the charging leopard in disdain and ignored it. He maintained his original speed, brushing past the leopard like the wind. He was extremely fast. The leopard bit into the air and immediately roared. It immediately chased after Jianqin. Even though it was extremely fast as well, it was still far too slow compared to Jianqin. After just a few steps, it had completely lost track of Jianqin. Half an hour later, Jianqin was already over 1,000 kilometers away from Mercenary City. He was forced to stop and find a safe place to sit down. He pulled out a Class 5 monster core from his space belt and began to absorb its energy to recover his strength. After half an hour of running, he had used up 3/4 of his Saint Force. If he did not recover soon, he would not be able to deal with anything that happened along the way. In the extremely dangerous wilderness, Jianqin needed to maintain his battle prowess at all times. For hours later, Jianqin's Saint Force had recovered to its peak. He then immediately used the Illusory Flash to continue on his way. 2 days later, the people who had been tailing Jianqin in Mercenary City had not seen Jianqin for 2 days. However, they only thought that Jianqin had sunk into cultivation. After all, it was very normal for people at their level to not eat or drink for several days while cultivating, so they did not take this matter to heart. The entire inn had been surrounded by their people and monitored day and night. Even a fly would not be able to escape their eyes, let alone a living person. At this moment, a few burly mercenaries entered the inn. After eating, they checked into a few rooms and went upstairs. Bang! Very soon, a sound rang out from upstairs, followed by a furious voice. Damned bastard! Shopkeeper, what kind of shitty room is this? Why is there a huge hole in the floor? Fuck! You made me fall from the 3rd floor all the way to the 2nd floor. The people in charge of monitoring Jianqin were stunned when they heard the man's curses. However, they quickly reacted and cursed inwardly. They immediately ran to Jianqin's room on the 2nd floor and discovered that Jianqin had already disappeared. Only a man stood up from the ground as he cursed. A half-meter wide hole had appeared in the ceiling. Oh no, he's escaped! The faces of the people in charge of monitoring Jianqin changed. They immediately informed the rest of the people, and everyone began to search for Jianqin's whereabouts. Not long after, the news of Jianqin's escape under the watchful eyes of more than 10 people reached the ears of the elders of the Jetta family and the Sher family. The elders of the 2 families flew into a rage and cursed the people in charge of monitoring Jianqin. Trash! Trash! A bunch of trash. Are you all blind? You're a bunch of trash. So many people were watching one person, but he still managed to slip away under your noses. Go and find him. If you can't find him, don't ever come back to see me, the short-tempered Sher clan's 4th brother cursed in exasperation. Standing beside him, the 3rd elder was much calmer. He turned to the kneeling middle-aged men and asked, Did you find out how Jianqin escaped and when? One of the men immediately reported what he knew to the 3rd elder. Hearing this, The third elder let out a long sigh and muttered, "It seems that this Jianchen escaped right under your noses. I didn't think that he would have such ability. Not simple." "Third elder, what should we do now?" the fourth elder asked. The third elder was smarter than him, and he could only hope that the third elder had a better idea. "What else can we do? The only thing we can do now is to increase the number of people in the city to search for Gentian's whereabouts. At the same time, send the news back to the family and ask them to send more people to assist us. Also, send out a mission to the mercenary union to search for Gentian." The third elder said, "Gentian is this year's mercenary king. If we send out a mission to the mercenary union, the people in Mercenary City will definitely know that we are going to deal with him. Wouldn't that be inappropriate?" The fourth elder was a little worried. "Don't worry, fourth elder. Even if they know, they won't interfere unless Jianchen has a special relationship with some of them. But that's impossible," the third elder said with a face full of confidence. The fourth elder also felt that this made sense and immediately shouted at the men, "Did you hear what the third elder said? What are you waiting for?" At the same time, the two elders from the Jetta family stared at the men in charge of monitoring Jianchen with a gloomy expression. One of them said angrily, "A bunch of trash. What are you waiting for? Also, send some people to search outside the city. If you can't find him, don't ever come back." "Yes, yes, we will go now." The middle-aged men felt as if they had been pardoned and quickly left. After 2 days of trekking through the mountains, Jianchen was now tens of thousands of kilometers away from Mercenary City. He could be considered safe for the time being. In a small river, Jianchen washed his body and took out a set of clothes from his space belt. After changing his appearance to that of an ordinary youth, he once again set out on his journey. Because of the mercenary tournament, many people recognized Jianchen, and it was not convenient for Jianchen to appear in his original appearance. Following this, Jianchen slowed down his pace. From the map, he already knew where he was. There was a second-class city about 100 kilometers away. At this moment, the sounds of battle rang out in Jianchen's ears. A chaotic battle was taking place up ahead. One side rode ordinary horses and were dressed very casually. There were over 100 people in total, and they seemed like bandits. The other side only had around 30 people, and they all wore the same clothes. They guarded a luxurious carriage as they fended off over 100 bandits. Seeing this scene, Jianchen couldn't help but think back to the time when he had just left the kingdom of Jessin and was attacked by the boundless bandits. At that time, he was only a small saint. It took him a lot of effort to deal with even a saint master. A great saint master was already a powerful expert in his eyes. Chapter 351. You Black Wind Bandits are going too far. We have already given you money. Why are you still not letting us leave? A middle-aged man who was holding a huge two-handed sword blocked the attacks of 3 bandits. He shouted loudly, and his face was filled with anger. Among the over 100 bandits, a person who seemed to be the leader laughed loudly and said, "I heard that your Lanming clan's eldest miss is an outstanding beauty with a face that can cause the downfall of a city. Why don't you give her to the boss as a bandit wife? This is also a good thing for your Lanming clan. Don't even think about it. The eldest miss is our Lanming clan's pearl and is deeply doted on by the old master. If anything happens to the eldest miss today, our Lanming clan will definitely use all of our clan's power to suppress your Black Wind bandits." That middle-aged man seemed to be the leader of this group of people and shouted loudly, "Ha ha ha! How could we not know what your Lanming clan is capable of? With just your Lanming clan, our Black Wind bandits are not even worth mentioning." The bandit leader laughed loudly without any fear. Then he shouted loudly, "Brothers, put in more effort. When the girl in the carriage is given to the boss, everyone will get some benefits." The bandits' morale immediately rose, and their attacks also became a bit more fierce. Immediately, the pressure on the 30 guards protecting the carriage increased greatly. Immediately, A few of them were chopped by blades and fell into a pool of blood. In the blink of an eye, out of the 30 guards, only 20 or so people were left bitterly resisting. On the other hand, the Black Wind Bandits people all seemed to have eaten stimulants. Their fighting spirit was high, and their attacks were heavier than the last. It was as if their bodies had endless strength. In a short moment, another 10 or so guards fell down. The bandits also paid a bit of a price. 10 or so people died and quite a few were injured. Overall, their overall strength was a lot stronger than their opponents. You will regret this. You will pay a price for doing this. Our Lanming clan's old master will definitely not let you go. The middle-aged man loudly shouted. His face was full of malevolence. With his high-level Great Saint Master strength, fighting against 2 mid-level Great Saint Masters and 2 low-level Great Saint Masters was already his limit. After this big battle, his body also suffered not light injuries, and he was bleeding nonstop. If this continued, he would not be able to hold on for much longer. Ha ha ha, your words are too serious. Wait until your Lanming clan's young miss becomes our boss's wife. Then our 2 clans will become in-laws. How can we fight each other? Don't you think so? The bandit leader laughed wildly and said. The middle-aged man immediately became ashen from anger. His eyes flashed with an ominous light. The strength. Seeing the guards around him fall one by one, the middle-aged man's face finally revealed a trace of despair. Even if I have to risk my life, I won't let you have an easy time. The middle-aged man's face was malevolent as he loudly roared. Immediately after, the saint force in his body began to circulate. He actually gave up on defense and attacked the 3 people in a situation where both sides were injured. Quickly retreat. He is going to use an Earth-tier battle skill. The bandit leader immediately said. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man's huge sword that contained traces of pressure slashed towards the bandit leader's head. The 3 Great Saint Master bandits had clearly worked together for many years. The 3 of them immediately joined together and gathered their strength to block the middle-aged man's Earth-tier battle skill. Huh! Following a loud sound, a large hole appeared in the ground. The middle-aged man and the 3 bandits simultaneously flew backwards. The 4 of them all had pale faces and spat out mouthfuls of blood. After the middle-aged man fell to the ground, it was difficult for him to crawl back up. He had already suffered heavy injuries. Immediately, a guard covered in blood supported him. With an anxious face, he said, "Captain, how are you? Are you okay?" The 3 bandit leaders did not suffer heavy injuries. They quickly crawled back up from the ground. One of them immediately shouted, "Quickly kill them all. Don't hurt the people in the carriage." Yes. Receiving the order, the bandits immediately swung their saint weapons at the last dozen guards who did not have much fighting strength left. Pooh! 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 Just as the bandits were about to swing their weapons down, the situation suddenly changed. One by one, the heads of the bandits separated from their necks and flew high into the air. Only the headless bodies were left standing there, violently spurting out pillars of blood that were more than a meter high. The sudden change stunned everyone on the spot. They did not understand what was going on at all. They did not know what was going on at all. For a moment, they actually did not react. The heads of the bandits continued to fly high into the air. One by one, the heads of the bandits flew high into the air. In a short 2 breaths of time, dozens of bandits had died without knowing why. Everyone had lost their heads. The sudden turn of events caused the guards to be dumbfounded. They stared at the scene in front of them in a daze, their faces filled with disbelief. W, what's going on? W, who killed them? A bandit leader stared at the ground covered in heads and blood in shock. His voice trembled as he spoke. Out of over 100 bandits, only the 3 of them were still alive. Suddenly, the bandit leader who had spoken trembled. He looked to the side in fear. A black-clothed figure had appeared there at some unknown time. It was a slender young man. He wore tight black clothes and had short hair that was only an inch long. His appearance was ordinary, and he was the type that would stand out in a crowd. He did not stand out at all. He seemed to be around 30 years old. The bandit leader stared at the black-clothed young man in fear. His voice trembled as he said, "Why were you killed our people?" The black-clothed young man glanced at the three of them indifferently. Afterward, he arrived before the heavily injured middle-aged man under the stunned gazes of the guards. He took out a Radiant Saint Force pill from his space ring and fed it to the middle-aged man. After ingesting the pill, the middle-aged man's complexion rapidly improved. He then became surprised. This is actually a Radiant Spirit pill. The middle-aged man was extremely surprised. He immediately clasped his hands at Genshin and said gratefully, "Thank you for your assistance. Our Lanming clan will definitely be grateful to you." "There's no need for that. I only saved you along the way," the black-clothed young man said indifferently. He was Genshin in his martial attire. The three bandits stared at the black-clothed Genshin in fear. They trembled all over. Several dozen people had actually been killed by the black-clothed young man in less than 2 seconds. Such strength was enough to make them feel fear. Probably even the first boss of the Black Wind Bandits did not possess such strength. "Quick, quick, let's go. He's an Earth Saint Master at the very least." One of the bandits trembled all over. His face had become ghastly pale, and he could not even speak coherently. He then immediately fled into the distance. The other two had also been frightened out of their wits by the words Earth Saint Master. They began to flee into the distance as well. "Stop if you don't want to die." A voice rang out from behind. Hearing this voice, the three fleeing bandits' legs became weak. They almost knelt down in fright. They immediately stood where they were, not daring to flee anymore. "Hero, I beg you to spare us. We have elders and children to take care of. We can't die, otherwise they won't be able to live." Immediately, a bandit knelt down and begged for mercy with tears and snot running down his face. In front of an Earth Saint Master at the very least, the three of them had no confidence in escaping. "The three of you come here." Genshin coldly stared the three bandits and shouted. The three bandits' faces were extremely ugly. They looked at each other, and their faces were filled with fear. They anxiously came before Genshin and kowtowed to beg for mercy. Genshin emotionlessly glanced at the three of them and then said to the middle-aged man, "You should deal with these three." "Thank you, little brother." The middle-aged man thanked Genshin and then said to the surviving guards, "Find a rope and tie the three of them up. We'll hand them over to the old patriarch to deal with later." Hearing this, the three of them immediately became pale. However, because there was a powerful Earth Saint Master present, they did not dare to act rashly. Very quickly, the three bandits were tied up by the guards like rice dumplings. "Guardian, what's the situation outside?" At this moment, a gentle girl's voice rang out from the carriage. The middle-aged man immediately replied, "Young miss, it's fine outside. A powerful little brother has saved us. Young miss, please come out and meet our savior." The carriage immediately fell silent, and then the door was opened. A woman wearing a red robe walked out of the carriage. This was a very beautiful girl. She was so beautiful that she could cause the downfall of a city. Her skin was as white and tender as mutton fat, and her limpid eyes emitted a soul-stirring light. Judging from her appearance, she was about 22 or 23 years old. She looked gentle and quiet, as if she was well-educated and well-mannered. Her appearance was not much worse than Huang Wan's, but the difference was that this girl was gentle and virtuous, while Huang Wan was unruly and capricious. The woman's face was sickly pale, perhaps due to the shock she had received earlier. There was not a trace of blood in her face, and there was still a trace of fear in her eyes. When she saw the bloody scene around her and the heads all over the ground, her body trembled. Her already pale face became even paler, frighteningly pale. This was the first time she had seen such a bloody scene in so many years. The girl forced herself to calm down. She glanced around and quickly saw the black-clothed and ordinary-looking Jianchen. She immediately bowed and said softly, "Thank you for your help. This little girl is very grateful for your life-saving grace." Jianchen waved his hand expressionlessly and said in a flat tone, "It's no big deal. I just did it in passing. Moreover, I also hate bandits. Now that you are safe, I should also leave. Goodbye." After saying that, Jianchen turned around and walked away. Although the young miss in front of him was very beautiful, Jianchen was not a lecherous person. Moreover, it was not like he had never seen beautiful people before. He had long been numb to them. No one thought that Jianchen would be so decisive, leaving just like that. The middle-aged man immediately stepped forward and stopped Jianchen. With a pleading look, he said, "Hero, you see that all of us guards are injured. Even moving is a problem, let alone fighting. Why don't you save us to the end and escort us to Soccer City? Otherwise, if we meet some people with evil intentions on the road, we won't have the ability to deal with them." Hearing this, Jianchen hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement, because the place he was going to was also a city called Soccer City. Chapter 352. Jianchen, agreeing to travel with them, made the group of guards very happy. With an Earth Saint Master joining them, they no longer needed to be on tenterhooks and guard against the Black Wind Bandits' reinforcements and those with evil intentions. Jianchen was politely invited to the carriage by the middle-aged man. He refused to let Jianchen walk on the ground, no matter what. Their mounts had already been killed in the battle with the bandits. Aside from the 3 second-rank magical beasts pulling the carriage, they couldn't find another mount to ride. Jianchen found it hard to refuse such hospitality, so he complied with the middle-aged man's wishes and sat cross-legged in the carriage's driver's seat. "Little brother, it's windy outside. You should go in," the middle-aged man said to Jianchen with a smile on his face. He was very polite. An Earth Saint Master could be considered a peak expert in the whole of Soccer City. The reason why their Lanming clan could become one of the 2 great clans in Soccer City was because their old patriarch was an Earth Saint Master. If they lost their patriarch, then their status in Soccer City would be much worse than it was now. At most, they could only be considered a first-rate clan in Soccer City, and there were more than a dozen such clans in Vesa City. From this, it could be seen that in a second-rate city like Soccer City, an Earth Saint Master had a very high status. "No, I don't like sitting inside," Jianchen said in an indifferent tone. Since Jianchen had said so, the middle-aged man couldn't say anything more. If he made Jianchen feel disgusted with him, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. At this time, a faint fragrance came from behind. The carriage door opened, and a woman wearing a red brocade gown came out. Finally, she sat down beside Jianchen. A pair of beautiful eyes that seemed to be able to steal souls stared at Jianchen with an incomparably bright light. She softly said, "Thank you, benefactor, for saving my life. This little girl's name is Lanning. May I ask benefactor's name?" Jianchen's gaze swept across Lan Ying's beautiful face, then shifted his gaze to the front and said, "I don't dare to accept your name. My name is Yang Yutian." "So it's young Master Yang. I wonder where young Master Yang lives, and where are you going on this trip?" Lan Ying's eyes flashed as she looked at Jianchen. However, when she saw the slight frown on Jianchen's face, she hurriedly said, "This little girl is just asking out of curiosity. If young Master Yang has something to say, please forgive this little girl's rudeness." Jianchen chuckled and said, "Miss is too serious. I come from a faraway country. This time, I am traveling around the continent to increase my knowledge and experience. At the same time, it is also a kind of experience. With the sky as my blanket and the earth as my bed, I have no fixed abode. No wonder young Master Yang has such powerful strength. It seems that he is very hardworking in his cultivation. The carriage slowly moved forward on the official road, while the dozen or so surviving guards followed closely on both sides of the carriage. On the road, they met a group of mercenaries riding ordinary horses. As the leader of the guards, a middle-aged man spent a large amount of money to buy a few horses from them. Afterwards, the two of them increased their speed and hurried to Soccer City. For hours later, the dozen or so guards covered in blood and a luxurious carriage finally entered the city. On the way, they attracted the attention of many passers-by. For a moment, the streets were filled with discussions. Aren't these people from the Lanming clan? They are actually all injured. Don't tell me that there is a nearby force that dares to make an enemy of the Lanming clan. The Lanming clan is one of the two great clans of Soccer City. I heard that their old patriarch is an Earth Saint Master. In this region, other than the Firebird clan that is equally famous as the Lanming clan, who would dare to provoke them, the black-clothed Gentian was sitting in the driver's seat. Under the escort of the dozen or so guards, he quickly moved through the streets of Soccer City. The young miss of the Lanming clan, Lanning, had already entered the carriage. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from the front of the street. A large group of people riding magical beast mounts were rushing towards Gentian's carriage. They moved very quickly. The leader was an old man riding a magical beast of the fourth step, a gale wolf. When the middle-aged man saw the old man running in front, he was immediately shocked. Then his eyes revealed an excited expression. He cried out in surprise, "It's the old patriarch." The old patriarch has personally rushed over. The old patriarch of the Lanming clan very quickly stopped in front of everyone. The middle-aged man and the dozen or so guards covered in blood immediately bowed and saluted, loudly saying, "We greet the patriarch!" The old man didn't even look at them. He turned around and jumped down from his mount. With a somewhat nervous expression, he quickly walked towards the carriage. With a somewhat anxious tone, he loudly said, Ing'er, are you all right?" The old man's expression was filled with anxiety and worry. The door of the carriage was opened. Lanning, in a red brocade gown, walked out of the carriage. As soon as she saw the old man, tears immediately streamed down her face. She cried out while choking with sobs, "Grandfather!" Seeing that Lanning was all right, the old man's expression immediately relaxed. Then, with vigorous steps, he jumped into the carriage. Both of his hands tightly hugged Lanning. With a face full of lingering fear, he muttered, "It's good that you're all right. It's good that you're all right. This time it's all grandfather's fault." The old man was the patriarch of the Lanming clan. He loved his granddaughter very much. Since young, he had treated his granddaughter as the pearl of his palm and protected her. Just now, when he heard that the dozen or so guards of the Lanming clan were escorting a carriage into Casa City, he immediately guessed that the guards protecting his granddaughter had been attacked on the road. Because he was very worried about his granddaughter's safety, he immediately led a group of people and rushed over. The old man comforted Lanning, then looked at the middle-aged man who was the captain of the guards with a sharp gaze. He shouted in a deep voice, "Guardian, what exactly happened on the road? Who is it that is making things difficult for our Lanming clan?" "Patriarch, we were attacked by the Black Wind bandits. The other party's lineup was strong, and we were not their match at all. If not for this young Master Yang's help at the critical moment, I'm afraid none of us would have been able to come back to see you," Guardian said with a face full of lingering fear. Hearing this, the gaze of the old patriarch of the Lanming clan immediately fell on Gentian, who was sitting cross-legged on the carriage. His eyes flashed as he quickly sized up Gentian. Then he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your help, little brother. Our Lanming clan will definitely be grateful to you." Gentian smiled slightly and also cupped his hands and said, "Patriarch is too polite. There's no need to thank me. I was just passing by. Little brother, our Lanming clan does not dare to forget the kindness of saving my granddaughter's life. Little brother, please come to our Lanming clan and let us do our best as hosts. The old patriarch said with a face full of sincerity. Jianchen hesitated for a moment, then nodded and agreed. Then I'll have to bother you. I won't bother you. I won't bother you. The old patriarch quickly waved his hand and said with a smile. At this time, Guardian pointed at the 3 bandits who were tied up like dumplings and said to the old patriarch, Patriarch, these 3 people are the bandit leaders who attacked us. It was young Master Yang who helped us capture them. We are waiting for Patriarch to deal with them. The 3 bandits' mouths were covered so they could only continuously make woo-woo sounds and looked at the old patriarch of the Lanming clan as if begging for mercy. The old patriarch's eyes turned cold, and he shouted, First take them back and lock them up. The Lanming clan was located in the northeast of Soccer City. It was an ancient house that occupied a very large area. At this moment, in a clean, bright, and luxuriously decorated hall, the old patriarch of the Lanming clan personally entertained Jianchen and casually chatted with Jianchen about some topics. Of course, he also inquired about Jianchen's identity and origin from the side. Jianchen also calmly and easily dealt with the old patriarch's questions. The topic of his identity and origin was completely the same as what he had told Lanning on the way here. Because Jianchen had concealed his aura and concealed his strength, the old patriarch was unable to accurately calculate Jianchen's exact strength. However, from Guardian's description, he was at least certain that Jianchen was an Earth Saint Master. Therefore, to such an expert, the old patriarch was rather polite and treated Jianchen as an equal. At this time, Jianchen suddenly opened his mouth and asked, Patriarch, I wonder if you have heard of something called a space gate. Space gate? What is that? The old patriarch's face was filled with doubt. Clearly, he did not know about the existence of space gates. A sliver of disappointment appeared on Jianchen's face. The main reason he had come to the Lanming clan was to inquire about space gates. This place was just too far away from the kingdom of Jessen. He needed to return through a space gate. Otherwise, even with his mastery of the illusory flash, it would take him a very long time just to travel back. Moreover, it would be extremely tiring. When he had left the Blue Wind Kingdom, the situation between the kingdom of Jessen and the neighboring kingdoms had become tense. Now that 2 years had passed, he did not know whether the kingdom of Jessen had declared war on the neighboring kingdoms or not. It was a pity that he could not obtain any information about the kingdom of Jessen. After all, the kingdom of Jessen was only a small kingdom. There were at least 100 such kingdoms on the Tianyuan continent. Even if one of them was destroyed, it would not cause any waves on the Tianyuan continent. That night, Jianchen and a few members of the upper echelon of the Lanming clan had a sumptuous dinner together. Under the warm hospitality of the Lanming clan, they temporarily settled down. At the same time, in a sealed room of the Lanming clan, a few members of the upper echelon of the clan were discussing some matters. Father, I don't think this method is appropriate. First of all, we don't know Yang Yutian's identity at all. We have only interacted with him for a short while, so we don't know much about his personality. Isn't it a little too hasty to betroth Ying to him so rashly? The one who spoke was a middle-aged man. He was Lan Ying's father. Patriarch, you must know that he is an Earth Saint Master. Although his appearance is rather ordinary, he is able to become an Earth Saint Master at the age of 30. His future is limitless. It is very likely that he will become a Heaven Saint Master in the near future. Once our Lanming clan has the support of a peak Heaven Saint Master, I'm sure everyone knows the benefits to our clan. Chapter 353. Lan Zhen. You're oversimplifying the situation. First of all, we don't know anything about that person called Yang Yutian. If he has some kind of powerful background, then it is indeed a good thing for our Lanming clan. But have you ever thought about what would happen if Yang Yutian offended some terrifying enemy? What would happen to our Lan Ming clan? Although our Lan Ming clan has a very high status in Sava City that is only limited to a small place like Soccer City. On the Tianyuan continent, our Lan Ming clan is as weak as an ant. There are some troubles that we can't afford to get involved with. So, I don't agree with sacrificing our lifelong happiness for this bet. That makes sense. The identity of this person called Yang Yutian is unclear. Currently, we can't predict whether he will bring good fortune or disaster to our Lan Ming clan. This is too risky. Don't think of the situation as that bad. As the saying goes, riches and honor are found in danger. If we don't take the risk, then our Lan Ming clan can only hole up in this small soccer city forever. This is an opportunity for our Lan Ming clan. After all, such young experts are extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent. However, every single one of them is a heavenly genius. Their future is limitless. This may be an opportunity for our Lan Ming clan to rise up. More than a dozen people were gathered around the table in an intense discussion regarding the matter of betrothing the young lady of the Lan Ming clan to Jianqin and binding Jianqin to the Lan Ming clan. Some people supported and some people opposed. Everyone had their own reasons, and all of them were very clear and logical. So, after a long discussion, they still couldn't come to a final decision. All right, everyone calm down first. We won't be able to come to a conclusion even if we continue to discuss like this. Why don't we listen to the patriarch's opinion? A person said. Immediately, the gazes of more than a dozen people gathered on the old patriarch of the Lan Ming clan. The old patriarch sat at the head of the table with an expressionless face. He gave off a dignified feeling. He looked at everyone with a sharp gaze and said in a deep voice, "Every single one of you is thinking of ways to rope in an Earth Saint Master as soon as you see him. Do you really think it's that easy to rope in someone like him? Moreover, such young experts are all very proud and arrogant, although there's no lack of low-key people among them. Such geniuses aren't people that our small Lan Ming family can keep. Maybe they won't stay in Soccer City for too long. Well, let's not discuss this anymore. This matter ends here. I will make my own judgment. If you have the leisure, then you should discuss how to deal with the Black Wind bandits. Humph! They even dared to make a move on my precious granddaughter. If our Lan Ming family doesn't get justice for this matter, then we won't have the face to establish ourselves in Soccer City." Yes, Patriarch. Everyone agreed one after another. The old family head's prestige in the Lan Ming clan was very high. No one dared to disobey his words. Early the next morning, Jianqin dismissed the servants who had been sent to scout him. Afterwards, he left the Lan Ming family and wandered around the streets. Soccer City was a second-class city. The flow of people was also very high. Some of the bustling streets were filled with people dressed in luxurious clothes. Mixed among them were quite a few rough-looking men dressed as mercenaries. In the middle of the streets, there were traces of carriages running over each other, as if symbolizing the splendor of Soccer City. Make way! Make way! Everyone make way! Suddenly, a team of more than 20 mercenaries riding on first-grade magical beast mounts came running from behind at high speed. In the end, they dashed towards the city gate like lightning, causing the surrounding pedestrians to look at them in astonishment one after another. They seemed to be the werewolf mercenaries. Looking at their hurried appearance, it seems that something urgent has happened. A passerby looked at the group of mercenaries in the distance and commented, "You don't know about this. Last night, a piece of news came. It is said that a 6th-rank magical beast has appeared in the 1,000 Poison Mountain range 500 kilometers away. It seems to have just given birth. Moreover, it is seriously injured and covered in blood. Its fighting strength is not even comparable to a 5th-rank magical beast." Looking at the Black Wolf mercenaries' hurried appearance, it seems that they are rushing over because of this matter. If they can kill a seriously injured 6th-rank magical beast, it would be a shocking fortune. A person dressed as a mercenary said, You're just bragging. Since there is a seriously injured 6th rank magical beast there, why don't you go? That person didn't believe and questioned. The mercenary's face was also filled with helplessness. He said, even if it is a heavily injured magical beast, it is still not that easy to deal with. With the strength of a mere Saint Master, I'm afraid that even escaping will be a problem. It is best if I don't get involved in this kind of matter. Otherwise, I guarantee that I won't be able to live for long. Not far away, Genshin's ears twitched slightly. He immediately heard the two people's conversation clearly. He immediately arrived in front of that person and asked, "Brother, you said that a 6th rank magical beast has appeared in the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. Is it true?" "Of course it's true. I just passed by that place last night, and there is already a large group of people gathered there. Almost all of them are great Saint Masters, and there are even Earth Saint Masters. How can it be false?" The mercenary's face was stern. It didn't seem like he was lying. At this time, the sound of hurried horse hooves came from behind. Another group of over 30 people riding on magical beast mounts quickly rushed in the direction of the city gate. Those are the people from the Golden Scale mercenaries. The ones running at the front are the captain and vice captain. It seems like they are also rushing towards the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. Just as the people from the Golden Scale mercenaries left, another group of people quickly rushed over from the end of the street behind them. That is one of the two great clans of Soccer City, the Firebird clan. Seeing the group of people, someone immediately cried out in surprise, "Isn't that the patriarch of the Firebird clan? He is one of the 3 great experts of our Soccer City. He is already an Earth Saint Master." Seeing that they are in such a hurry, could it be that something big has happened? The people on the street immediately began to discuss spiritedly. Not long after the people from the Firebird clan left, another group of people rushed over from the end of the street. When Genshin saw this group of people, a trace of surprise immediately appeared in his eyes. This was because this group of people was actually the people from the Lanming clan. The one at the front was the old patriarch of the Lanming clan. When the people from the Lanming clan were about to pass by him, Genshin walked out of the crowd and stopped the group of people from the Lanming clan. In the beginning, the people from the Lanming clan all had angry expressions on their faces. But when they saw that the other party was Genshin, the anger on their faces immediately disappeared without a trace. They greeted Genshin with smiles on their faces. The patriarch of the Lanming clan also revealed a trace of a smile on his face and said, "Little brother, we have finally found you." "Patriarch, seeing that you are in such a hurry, could it be that something has happened?" Genshin asked. The patriarch nodded and said, "That's right. Last night, we received news that there is a heavily injured Class 6 magical beast in the Thousand Poison Mountain Range 500 kilometers away. We are currently rushing over there. Originally, I had sent someone to invite you here early in the morning, but you were already not in the clan. Due to the lack of time, we could only inform the guards to wait for you to return and tell you the news. After that, we left first. Little brother, I wonder if you are interested in going with us to the Thousand Poison Mountain Range." So this matter is actually true. Genshin murmured in a low voice, then agreed to the request of the Lanming clan. Next, one of the people from the Lanming clan immediately gave up his leather mount to Genshin, while he and another person rode together. Genshin didn't speak nonsense, mounted his mount, and followed the 30 people of the Lanming clan to the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. After Genshin left, the mercenary still stood there in a daze, looking at the distant figure of Genshin, muttering, "Who is this person actually walking so close to the Lanming clan? Even the patriarch of the Lanming clan is so polite to him. If I had known earlier, I would have tried to befriend him more." Genshin and the people of the Lanming clan were madly rushing along the road, while the patriarch of the Lanming clan was constantly explaining the news of the Thousand Poison Mountain Range to Genshin, riding on their 3rd-rank magical beasts. everyone quickly left Soccer City, then madly rushed along the official road. After an hour and a half of hurrying, they finally arrived at the periphery of the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. From afar, they could see a huge mountain range creeping on the ground like a giant beast. The peak of the mountain was faintly discernible in the clouds. Not to mention the steep terrain, it was also very high. The highest peak was at least 4,000 meters high. Even from afar, they could see a faint layer of poisonous gas floating around the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. And at the periphery of the Thousand Poison Mountain Range, a large group of people had already gathered. The number of people was at least several thousand, and many tents had already been set up. The group of people of the Lanming clan stopped at the periphery of the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. Then the old patriarch took out a jade bottle and gave it to Genshin, then said, "Little brother, this is the antidote, although the poisonous gas here is not strong and does not pose a threat to us. But after a long time it will inevitably have some effects, so for the sake of safety, we should take a poison avoidance pill." Genshin nodded, then took out a poison avoidance pill from inside and swallowed it as if he was eating soybeans. After the people of the Lanming clan swallowed a poison avoidance pill, they dismounted one after another, leaving behind 2 people to keep watch. The rest followed the old patriarch into the depths of the Thousand Poison Mountain Range. At this point, there was no need to distinguish the direction at all, because the ground had been densely covered with footprints that led to the depths of the forest. They only needed to follow this path forward, and the path made by the people in front of them would naturally lead them in the right direction. The weakest among them had already reached the level of Great Saint Master, so their speed was very fast. Not long after, they climbed to the highest peak. Then, after walking for a short distance, they stopped, because in front of them there were already several hundred people gathered here. Each and every one of them had a serious expression on their face as they stared ahead.